Transferring away from the Dueling Ground instance. Number of people in Dueling Ground 10. Combat rating 100. Settling scores. Player Su Buxian achieved victory in the duel, earning 1,000 duel points. Player successfully defeated a projection, earning 23,123 duel points. Your ranking in the 7th rank duel arena has risen. Your current level is silver. The likelihood of encountering special events has increased. Your attributes for firearms, sword-type weapons, knife-type weapons, and cooking have slightly improved. A random silver-level dueling badge can be obtained. Note: you touched Pandora's box, learned of an astonishing inside story, but also contracted more ominous. Ominous, huh? Su Qi slightly narrowed his eyes, recalling the question mark he encountered after fleeing the Rainbow Bridge, which also mentioned ominous. However, the traveling merchant had acted to conceal himself. It seems that ominous is also related to the old days, that guy. An image of the traveling merchant surfaced in Su Qi's mind as he had been pondering a question since exiting the Dueling Ground. That was the real identity of the traveling merchant. He definitely was not just a simple traveling merchant walking among the 10,000 realms. That finger bone, that sheet of music, do they represent coordinates within the old days? I will only know the next time we meet. Su Qi then shifted his gaze back to the panel. Drawing a silver-level dueling badge. Congratulations to the player for drawing silver-level badge. Open swinging. Su Qi raised an eyebrow and grasped the materialized badge in his hand. Name: Open swinging. Type: tool. Effect: using this badge, you can enter open swinging mode anywhere, subject to system determination. Once determined successfully, you can enter open swinging state. The state lasts for 3 minutes, allowing you to recover from all injuries, regain full physical strength, release all negative status buffs, and restore 50% of your spiritual energy. Note: open swinging can only be used once per instance. If the open swinging state is interrupted, the attempt will fail. Note: who wouldn't want to lie down and rest for a few minutes in a weary journey? Great stuff. A light shone in Su Qi's eyes. This item perfectly struck his fancy. Sometimes during battles with other people or bosses, there would be a moment when he wanted to stop, lie on a chair, play some music, drink a cup of tea, and take a brief rest. Speaking of badges, Su Qi reached out and took out 2 other badges. One was a Srilan badge, which could block a fatal attack. The other one was a highly rare badge awarded by Paradise after the final ranking battle, the 12 Dimensions Grand Slam World Tree Badge. Originally, it was said that players should discover its value themselves. But in reality, looking at the badge engraved with a vast ancient tree, Su Qi had tried many methods, but had failed to activate it. Question marks could occasionally provide him some inside information. It seemed vast and possessed extraordinary power, but damn, he had no idea how to activate it. He put all those away, and a frame popped up in front of Su Qi again. Player has completed the Dueling Ground mode, and needs to experience 2 more instances before acquiring another opportunity to enter the Dueling Ground. Then there's no rush. Su Qi had no intention of using points to exchange for chances. The Dueling Ground was good, but it only offered high rewards when encountering projections like the black-haired youth. If it was just fooling around with a group of players, the gains were very low. Rather than actively seeking it, it was better to let things take their natural course. Also, it mentioned that the probability of encountering special events has increased, and it seems not limited to the Dueling Ground, so perhaps it includes other instances as well. Su Qi thought he already had a high probability of encountering special events. If it increased further, who knew what might happen? At this time, another message arrived. You've received a friend request. Su Qi opened it to find requests from Bai Yilin, Old Mo, and others, but of course, he only approved Bai Yilin and Old Mo. How are you considering it? Su Qi sent the message directly to Bai Yilin. Bai Yilin sent back a string of silent symbols. Brother Su, are you serious? During the time at the Dueling Ground, Su Qi had invited him to join the so-called Hustlers sect. Of course, I am a man of my word. But, Bai Yilan showed some hesitation. Right now, besides my former companions, I have nothing, and I also have many enemies like that man with glasses. You can't possibly have more enemies than me. Bai Yilan seemed taken aback. That's true. But my strength is still only at a mid-level among the many new stars. Bai Yilan was still unwilling to become a burden. His talent had fallen, and no one was willing to trust him anymore. An abandoned genius, just a wandering stray dog. When I was in that world, what I valued was your confidence. How come now you are hesitant and fearful? Su Chi softly said. I just don't want to be a burden. Don't worry. There's no such thing as a burden. Our sect is not only still in its growth phase, but also operates on a pay-for-work basis, needing you all to contribute to building it. Bai Yiling. However, these words made Bai Yilan fall into deep thought. At first, he thought the Hustlers sect was a vast organization and joining it would only make him a burden. But now it seemed not having heard of the Hustlers sect was simply because this organization hadn't developed at all yet. However, this being said, Bai Yilan's heart lightened considerably. I understand. I'll join. Then congratulations, you've become an intern member of the Hustlers sect. Su Chi paused. Of course, before you officially join, please pay a fee of 2,000 spirit coins as an initiation fee. Also, don't initiate any matches for now. Let's enter as a team tomorrow. Bai Yiling. He now somewhat understood the meaning of paying to work. And Su Chi still had several messages to deal with. The first was a message from old Mo. Bad. Su, your fight in the dueling ground was recorded by that guy called Silver Hand. It has now spread throughout Paradise, and you'll need to be careful in the days ahead. Su Chi had anticipated this, but it didn't matter to him. The fight recorded by Silver Hand was just the initial auto-attacks. The ensuing bursts were not recorded at all. The messages from others like Left Hand and Sword White Clothes mentioned a place codenamed the Most Evil World, and it seemed they wanted to make an appointment to team up with him before that. What does this mean? I've never heard of the Most Evil World before, but it looks like something has happened, something of great value, leading many players to flock to it. And these guys seem to think I won't want to miss it. Su Chi replied to each message with, the number you have dialed cannot be reached. Please try again later, which was quite a polite way to postpone their requests. Then, Su Chi also came to understand what this the Most Evil World meant. It was an email message. Paradise's newest S-rank event. The Most Evil World Invitation. Brief. This is a world that has drawn numerous powers into the fray, called forth by the abyss. It's also turned into an extremely dangerous place of death due to the descent of a terrifying entity. Yet, at the same time, it is quietly presenting massive opportunities. The event will start in 2 months according to the present world's timeline. Paradise time will vary. Please make all the necessary preparations. The Most Evil World, huh? Quite a bold name, and it's the call of the abyss, Su Chi muttered. Looks like something has happened that I'm unaware of. It had been said before, the passage of time in the present world and Paradise was different. Everything in the present world moved quickly. Only 2 or 3 days might have passed for me, while their months may have gone by. Su Linqiu seemed to realize that Su Chi was currently at leisure and quickly made a call to contact him. Good news. How so? Your situation has improved. The Most Evil World has drawn away some of the attention that was originally on you. As long as you don't cause any major incidents, you won't face a situation where, if exposed, everyone comes after you. Really? This Most Evil World is that attractive? Can you tell me what happened? Su Chi's curiosity piqued. If I say this name, you'll understand. Su Linqiu exhaled. Despicable person. The next day, in Paradise's Sequence City. Boss, have you really decided? Butterfly sighed softly. To join the Hustlers, an organization without even a proper name? Giant Axe hesitated. Actually, there are quite a few organizations interested in inviting you, boss. But Bai Yilan shook his head. Those organizations? Even if I join, I'd just be a puppet and a tool. They won't provide any valuable resources. The three had been companions on a journey once. Giant Axe and Butterfly belonged to different clubs but were unable to offer help. Then, Butterfly, what did Subushian offer you, boss? Bai Yilan paused. He charged me a fee of 2,000 spirit coins. Giant Axe and Butterfly? That's a bit too much. What kind of organization is this? He's playing you. Boss, your choice was too hasty. Bai Yilan looked at the agitated pair and calmly said, I may be adept at calculation, but this time I want to trust my intuition, so don't try to persuade me. It was his choice. Even if the Hustlers was just a small group with nothing to its name, he was willing to take on the consequences. It was nothing more than a new beginning. At that moment, before the arranged meeting time with Subushian, someone pushed open the door and walked into the tavern where they were seated. He has arrived. Bai Yilan looked towards the figure, as the person he was waiting for here was approaching. Long time no see, Brother Bai. The person greeted with a hint of a smile. I didn't expect you to refuse my invitation. Have you found another option? Butterfly and Giant Axe looked at the emblem in front of the other person. A look of surprise on their faces. Sequence City? Having the emblem of Sequence City meant the other person was from the Hub organization, an inside member. So, even such a powerful organization has invited you, boss. Butterfly's eyes widened as she looked toward Bai Yilan. And you actually refused. The person pulled out a chair and sat down next to Bai Yilan, offering a smile and a greeting to the two. Hello there. Butterfly and Giant Axe trembled slightly. Hello. The person's demeanor was that of a superior, and their presence was unfathomably profound. They likely held a very high position within Sequence Hub. Here's the thing. The person ordered a drink and gently laughed. I really wished he could enter Sequence City. Perhaps you can help persuade your boss. This might be the last chance for a rise. The two were inwardly shaken but did not speak. The person wasn't addressing them specifically, but more importantly, there seemed to be a tone of condescension in their words. Bai Yilan spoke softly. Sorry, I've already joined another organization. The person narrowed their eyes slightly. Which one? The Hustlers. The person paused for a moment, expecting it to be a large organization they had heard of, but a quick search in their mind yielded no results. It seems you have given up on yourself. They nodded slightly and sipped their drink. They had access to a wealth of information. If they hadn't heard of it, it meant the organization wasn't valuable enough to appear in their database. Bai Yilan did not retort but slowly lifted his cup. Thank you for the invitation, but unfortunately, the other calmly smiled and did not speak another word, but finished their drink, stood up, and lightly said, Take care. After the person left the tavern, Butterfly and Giant Axe finally let out a sigh of relief. Boss, who was that person? Sequence City, the person in charge of the first star ring, Bai Yilan calmly stated. The first star ring? Put simply, it's the place where real rising stars are taught various experiences, accompanied by Taoist guardians. Its members are all composed of the fallen geniuses of the past. Both were visibly shocked. Such is the case, but with your potential, you would never agree to something like that. Is that so? Bai Yilan showed a trace of self-mockery. His pride was no longer what it used to be. It had been worn down. If not for Subushian emerging halfway through, he might have truly considered such a path, becoming just one of the many participants in a race. However, having already promised to join the Hustlers, even after he searched for information and found that the Hustlers Club was established before the ranking battles, with very few members, no funds, experience, or background, and the club had not even paid the maintenance fee yet. His 2,000 spirit coins seemed to just fill the gap, returning the status from in debt to operational. To be honest, Bai Yilan felt a bit silent after seeing all this, as if he had entered a deep pit. But there was nothing he could do. He would not change a promise made. That was his principle. No matter how low the Hustlers sect might be, he would give it his all. Subushian is inviting you to join the Hustlers Club. After bidding farewell to the two, Bai Yilan confirmed his choice. After all, Su Buxian wanted to hold a hustlers' assembly. Swoosh! His body was being teleported into a room with only a conference table. Hi! And in the room sat only a young man who greeted him with a smile. My name is Xiao Beitong. Welcome to the Hustlers Club. My name is Bai Yilan. Bai Yilan nodded calmly, sizing up the other person and the place. He did not know the details about the Hustlers sect, having just paid off the debt, but noticing the many empty spots, he asked, "Have the others from the Hustlers sect not arrived yet?" Xiao Beitong had a peculiar look, somewhat frozen. Sorry, didn't Brother Su tell you? As for the Hustlers sect, apart from Brother Su, there's only me. Oh no. He paused for a moment. And now with you that makes two. Bai Yiling. The situation seemed even worse than he had imagined. Bai Yilan sat in a seat next to him, lost in silence. There was that feeling like a college graduate looking for a job, being told about all the great company benefits, free meals and accommodation, a salary of 8,000, work from 9 to 6, weekends off. In reality, it was like being led directly into a pit of a multi-level marketing den, where you work to death if you don't actually die. So, how did you get in here? Bai Yilan looked at Xiao Beitong. Of course, the first thing to do in any place was to gather information. Xiao Beitong pointed at himself. Me? I vaguely remember it was a not-so-hot afternoon. I walked into the players' hall, ready to sell my stuff, and had my eye on a harmless-looking young man. Then, I was forcibly dragged onto the pirate ship. Xiao Beitong spoke with a sigh, a wistful look on his face. Bai Yiling. Even he, not good at expressing his emotions, looked up at the ceiling. Of course, don't feel too bad. Trust me, you made the right choice by refusing the invitation from Sequence City. They've nurtured too many newcomers who are now gaining momentum very quickly, growing at an extremely rapid pace. There's hardly any chance for talents like you guys, who had their prime in Dongshan, to make a comeback, babbled Xiao Beitong. Hearing Xiao Beitong's words, Bai Yilan suddenly tensed and looked at the other person. How do you know? About the invitation from Sequence City. Xiao Beitong paused and awkwardly touched his head with a smile. Sorry, didn't I tell you? I'm information omniscient, serving as the head of the intelligence division. So, you're in charge of gathering information for the Hustlers sect? No, Xiao Beitong counted on his fingers. I'm also responsible for posting small ads all over Paradise, completing cleaning tasks for clubs and Paradise bars, acting as the person in charge of Third Night Network, peddling various gossip, fringe, and entertainment tidbits. Bai Yilan's expression slightly froze. He temporarily put aside the messy tasks mentioned before. You're the person in charge of Third Night Network? Naturally, he had also heard of this website. This was a small gossip site that had been around during the public test period. Although it dealt with gossip and wasn't quite perfect internally, during tournament times, it always managed to release internal information of major clubs or explosive news that many didn't know, in a timely manner. During that period, the user base of Third Night Network continued to expand, and it became a small community where many people gossiped, chatted, and traded information, including lots of information about budding superstars. Even more importantly, how come I remember? Third Night Network was the first to expose information about Su Buxian with a bounty. Bai Yilan looked toward Xiao Beitong with a complex expression. Could it be that? Xiao Beitong nodded. Yes, it was Brother Su's idea. He would often release some information posted on Third Night Network and trade with various clubs. After getting some data, he would then distribute it to the numerous ordinary players, cultivating user habits. Consequently, many ordinary players started to naturally gather here for discussions and exchanges. Paradise actually had forums, but those could only be used in the real world. However, due to the division between hubs, each major club had its own system, with more serious official websites and no time to cater to ordinary players, leaving this entertainment area to be captured by Third Night Network, which specialized in gossip and minor entertainment. But, Bai Yilan spoke calmly, this website has a lot of internal messages, and also personal data on many clubs and superstar newcomers. All of that is confidential. How do you know about it? Of course, that's because Su Chi's voice slowly came over. He stepped forward, walking from the door to the front. The hustlers have friends everywhere. Bai Yilan was startled. He suddenly fell silent because new information began to appear before his eyes. Someone is entering the hustlers' club lobby. Someone is entering. Messages kept popping up. As the club door opened, figures walked in through the entrance. Bai Yilan's expression stiffened slightly. All were young and some held familiar faces, and their IDs were not hidden. At first glance, Bai Yilan knew their identities. Sword white clothes. Left hand. Bai Changwei. Red Wolf. Yun Zhantian. These are all the superstar newcomers cultivated by the top major clubs. A flicker of surprise showed in Bai Yilan's eyes. Every person who appeared here had performed well in the ranking battles, were the new stars who had risen after entering Paradise, and, more importantly, the organizations backing them were all top tier as well. Yet they were all here. Brother Su, long time no see. Long time no see, Su Buxian. Everyone greeted each other. Seeing you intact kind of bothers me. This was Left Hand, speaking in a somber tone. This is also the first time you've formally responded to us in a long while. Su Chi faced everyone with a smile. Have a seat first, classmates. Ever since his own name became widely known after the Rainbow Bridge incident, a wide array of clubs had sent him numerous emails, threats, invitations, contacts, trades, etc., to which Su Chi had not replied, including Left Hand and others. After their clubs knew they had contact with him, they all wanted to reach out. Previously, Su Chi would politely decline, but after learning from the young man with black hair about the hub matter, he decided to do something. First off, let me introduce two members of the Hustlers sect. Su Chi looked towards Xiao Baitong. Xiao Baitong, whom you've met. Another person, Bai Yilan, you should also be aware of him. Everyone nodded in agreement. I've seen his profile, and there are many research videos of his battles within the club. His body technique dual method is also very worth learning for us. Bai Yilan remained silent. He indeed had an outstanding experience in this area, which is why the person from Sequence City wanted to poach him. At that moment, sitting next to him, Left Hand patted his shoulder sympathetically. Brother, are you really out of options? Bai Yiling. With the addition of that guy to your hustler sect, you only have 3 people. It's clearly a trap, yet you're joining it. Seems like you're not thinking clearly. Left Hand chuckled and said, why don't you join us at the Dragon God Club instead? A top-tier organization with all the welfare and securities you need. It's a bit excessive to poach people right in front of me. Su Chi pulled out a camera. Should I release this thing or not? Seeing the image on it made Left Hand's face twitch and his whole body shudder. I was wrong, Brother Su. Spare my life. Left Hand apologized without hesitation. The image was recording his dark history, where, in the projection of the ancient battlefield, he was forced to say embarrassing lines on video. But he remembered that there wasn't anyone recording at that time. Yet, the scene was definitely on the screen. Su Buxian, you really deserve to die. Su Chi calmly put the camera away. It was not an actual recording but a panoramic recreation from Fingertip Universe, later recorded using the spiritual eyes. In other words, it was fabricated. But since it really happened, the fact that it was fabricated doesn't matter anymore. Okay. Su Chi sat down in his own seat, looking at everyone. Today, I invited you all here for a reason. Everyone's gaze turned towards Su Chi. It's about the upcoming major event in the Most Evil World, Su Chi said softly. The Most Evil World event was the first major event in Paradise. The pollution value rose to over 500 due to this event, and although it has stabilized now, the undercurrents are still surging. When the event erupts again, the pollution value will likely become uncontrollable. But the greater the risk, the higher the potential rewards, and the value within is immeasurable. I want to make a deal with you, and the clubs behind you. Everyone paused. What deal? They all became serious. Familiar as they were with Su Buxian, They had to treat this with caution whenever their organizations were involved. Su Chi smiled slightly. A deal that neither you nor they will be able to refuse. You have entered a team status with player Su Buxian. Do you wish to initiate team matching immediately? After reading this message, Bai Yilan started the matching process. It's matching now. Okay. Was the deal you just mentioned serious? Bai Yilan asked softly. He couldn't help asking about something that happened half an hour ago before they matched with the right instance. What else? Bai Yilan said no more, finding it hard to understand the other's thought process. Why make such a deal with other top clubs? Anyway, trust the creed of our sect. No losses, no idleness, Su Chi said calmly. As soon as he learned about the most evil world yesterday, he immediately got to understand the situation. Clearly, the term despicable person became prominent again and topped as the annual buzzword in the present world, alluding to the most evil world. Su Chi recognized at a glance what that world was. It was where all dreams began. That is, the first nightmare-level solo instance he experienced when he entered the game, the Murder Town. Of course, that was also where he became sworn brothers with the evil god. He still vaguely remembered that moment, exchanging tokens of brotherhood with the evil god, eye for eye, and him offering a display of his football skills in return. And now, with this place exposed, Su Chi dared to anticipate the worst regarding this incident. The exposure of his being the despicable person. Once exposed, things would be completely different. But there was no need to worry just yet. The most evil world, according to the current time, more than 3 months had passed, but it seemed that no significant clues had been revealed. More accurately, everyone's progress was slow due to the various terrifying and deadly dangers that filled it. High sequences were forbidden to pass, and many from the low sequence who wanted to explore could not make any progress. Some have revealed. They vaguely saw numerous boss-level monsters lurking about, and the projection of an eerily peculiar town. It seemed to hide something, but no one could find the way in. Some believed that clues to the despicable person were there. Others came to this place in search of different opportunities. Because of the descent of the evil god, terrifying strength caused massive changes in the world, attracting a vast number of fragments from space to amalgamate within, and many opportunities also became one of the countless reasons people flocked here. So, after learning all this, Su Chi decided something must be done in preparation before the situation progressed beyond predictability. The Hustlers sect needed to be mobilized, both in the present world and paradise. Now, before the most evil world event begins, I must integrate the ancient relic and enhance my strength to 7th rank. This was also what other players in Paradise were doing. After entering Paradise, people like Left Hand saw their strength increase rapidly, thanks to the significant tilted support from the club. Alas, I'm alone and can only rely on the charity of friends in the martial world. At this moment, a notification popped up in Su Chi's line of sight. Match successful. Team instance difficulty. Nightmare. Number of players. 12. Entering. Endless darkness surged from all around, and Su Chi listlessly shot out a cluster of starlight before being finally engulfed. Please be aware. The next stop is Urshan Bridge. Passengers seeking to disembark should make your way to the exit in advance and prepare to leave. Su Chi had not yet opened his eyes when he heard a pleasant voice by his ear. Upon opening his eyes, he found himself sitting in a front seat of a bus, the scenes of a city passing by. Around him were people commuting to and from work, as well as students carrying backpacks. Are they all ordinary people? And, Su Chi noticed, Bai Yilan is not here, and neither are the other team members. But the world was also a bit different from the normal one. 2 suns hung in the sky, while armed combat teams patrolled everywhere. There were also advertisements on huge screens. In the footage, a man wearing a cloak flew down from the sky, defeated a giant monster, and then laughed as he held up a bottle of milk. Do you want to become a superpower being like me? Start by drinking the new energy milk powder. What? A milk powder advertisement, and in a Superman costume at that. However, Su Chi didn't think it was an exaggerated advertising gimmick. Superpowers truly existed in this world. At this moment, the bus had not yet reached the stop. Someone at the front screamed, "Robbery!" A black man snatched a woman's bag beside him and turned to run away. People looked at the tall and muscular man and stepped aside. But then, someone clad in low-quality uniform, including a patchy headgear, climbed up the building beside them with incredible speed. Getting close, swung in midair. Fall. He slammed the robber forcefully to the ground. "Sorry, buddy, you're probably not very lucky today," the figure said, shaking his head while stepping on the man's back. The black man couldn't lift his head but was still cursing stubbornly. "You bastard! Tisk!" The man was not annoyed. "I hope the time you spend in jail allows you to learn some manners." After hanging him below the sign of a street-side bakery, he swung back quickly to the side of the original owner. "Ma'am, your bag." "Thank you," the lady said gratefully. "No need to thank me. Your friendly neighbor will protect your safety." "And," the figure touched his head, "Ma'am, could you lend me $2? I will definitely pay you back." He pointed to the bus that was at a standby. "I'm running out of time. If I don't hurry, I'll miss today's interview." "Aren't you a superpower user, swinging about so swiftly?" The lady gestured to his prior actions. But the figure lifted his own arm. "That was my homemade high-polymer bio-line, but funds are tight, and it's all used up. And the climbing just now was due to this pair of spider gloves and specially made shoes. I'm not some superpower user. However," the figure lifted his head, "I also harbor the desire to join a superpower organization." Suchi looked at the figure in the rough uniform, currently getting on the bus. The people around had become accustomed to the sight. Including the recent robbery, which hardly counted as a disturbance, things had already returned to complete calmness. "What can I say? It seems superhumans are quite prevalent in this world." Suchi gazed at the street scenes outside, where, beyond most of the advertisements, there were also flags of the Superpower Alliance. The Superpower Alliance. It appears to be a specialized organization managing superhumans, and most importantly, this alliance seems to have 7 people. Whether in advertisements or on signboards, the figures of these 7 people were visible, and the one standing in the center position was the man who had previously endorsed baby formula, wearing a Superman uniform. He wore a kind, amiable smile, placed amongst them. For some reason, that smile looked strangely familiar to Suchi, reminiscent of the forced smiles of the Venerables from Evil Town, somewhat unnatural and tinged with hypocrisy. But, to others, this smile shone with the brilliance of a savior. Many people around were taking pictures with him, their eyes filled with admiration and fervor. Not only are these 7 top-tier powerful superhumans, but it seems they are also idols to many, and it looks like lots of people are breaking their heads trying to get into this superpower organization. Suchi observed the various sights outside the window, casually gathering a lot of valuable information. Suddenly, Suchi was slightly startled. Through the reflection on the bus's glass, he could see his own face. His left eye, his pupil. The color wasn't normal, to be precise, it had become the state of spiritual eyes, and it was somewhat different from usual, because there was a double image overlaying it. Within it was a sheep head, its profound eyes like the sea, superimposed over his own, watching him. In that moment, Suchi felt as if he had truly locked eyes with the evil god. A sense of uncontrollable terror surged forth, not emanating from Suchi's own heart but from an indomitable confrontation, the sinister evil that rose up naturally. Suchi's mind raced with thousands of thoughts, yet he gradually calmed down. Big trouble. The real strength within this eye is beginning to be unsealed. Before, he had been able to possess this eye because its power was sealed to 99.9999999%, but now the other side's strength had begun to seep through. But this is also good news. It is my chance to control its strength. Moreover, Suchi looked at his reflection in the window, the sheep-head's pupils as if the eyes of an abyssal demon watching him, a vague aura of terror stealthily approaching. Perhaps, as the strength unsealed, The evil god dwelling in the abyss could sense it and might do something through it. This was a gamble, a tug of war, a trial inevitably fraught with great mortal perils. After all, the power of the mighty evil god wasn't so easily controlled. And Su Chi slowly pulled out a pair of sunglasses and put them on. That sheep head double image wasn't just visible to himself. A passerby had just glanced at it and jumped in shock. It seemed if he couldn't control this strength, the thing in his pupils would stay visible, and frightening children wouldn't be good. Now, the bus was mostly boarded, slowly starting to move. There were a good number of people on the bus, but it was not yet cramped. The uniformed guy was also on board, a helpful fellow with a strong sense of justice and moral rectitude. Currently, he was politely pointing out the uncivilized behaviors of many on the bus. Please don't throw your chewing gum and cigarettes on the floor. Don't lean here. You will block the way for people getting off. Children, please don't touch the emergency hammer. It's our safeguard for escaping danger. He was like a safety officer, correcting and instructing. And if anyone didn't comply, he would persistently persuade them, patiently until they grew annoyed, grumbling, all right, I got it. It's no big deal, quit nagging. Why don't you join the superpower organization and do some world saving instead of fussing over us ordinary citizens? Yet the man wasn't irritated. Sir, do not commit a wrong because it's small. Everyone should elevate their morals. Plus, I'm on my way to join the superpower organization. Once I pass the interview and join the superpower team, I will shed my light and warm our world. Nuts. The disgruntled person cursed once more and turned away. Su Chi witnessed this scene, noting that though the guy's gear was manufactured, he did have a faint trace of spiritual energy about him. And it seemed his goal was to join the superpower organization. This organization seemed crucial to the world, yet the main storyline had not yet been triggered. But Su Chi didn't intend to make contact with this fellow. His moral standards were a bit too high, a genuinely good person to the point of being obsessive. Simply put, he was inclined to meddle in any immoral matter, tirelessly correcting others. And Su Chi, he was a villain with high functionality but low morality, preferring to enjoy the scenery outside the window. The bus route would eventually reach the superpower organization. He would disembark then. This was the most direct information indicated by the clues he had collected so far. After the bus stopped, several people got off and a few more boarded. Among them was an elderly man wearing a domed hat. Elderly gentleman. This man walked directly up to him. Let me help you. The elderly gentleman, wearing a hat, did not accept his offer, but gently said, Do I look like someone who can't even climb the stairs? Of course not, but respecting the elderly is something we should do, he said earnestly. The elderly gentleman didn't speak and didn't let him help, just stepping up with a light step. Su Chi narrowed his eyes. This elderly gentleman seemed not to be an ordinary person, but in this world, the likelihood of encountering a superhuman was high, so it wasn't very surprising. However, he hadn't anticipated. The man looked around, then after observing the seated passengers, noticed the youngest, Su Chi, and walked straight over to him. My friend, could you please give up your seat for this elderly gentleman? Su Chi paused, wearing sunglasses, and did not immediately speak. As a young man with a sound body, you should consider the elderly. He needs this seat more than you do, he said with heartfelt sincerity. Su Chi slightly tilted his head. However, it seems that the elderly gentleman doesn't need it. The elderly gentleman was leaning against the window, pulling out a pocket watch, calmly observing. He shook his head. Just because others don't need it, does that mean we can ignore the disadvantaged? Just because someone doesn't scream for help, does that mean we shouldn't care? Su Chi listened quietly, turning his head. I'm actually also part of the disadvantaged here, without any social or medical insurance. Besides the fare I paid to get on the bus, I have nothing. He spoke the truth. How could he possibly have local currency, being someone who had just entered this instance? The bus ride was also arranged by the system. The man was taken aback, listening to how pitiful the other sounded, and somewhat waveringly muttered, But fair is fair. Su Chi gently stood up. No need to say more, you're right. He gave up his seat. The man scratched his head, deciding to prioritize the elderly gentleman. Please take a seat. However, the elderly gentleman adjusted his hat and ignored him. Elderly gentleman? Ding dong. The bus's announcement rang out. We are approaching the Superpower Association stop. Please wait at the rear door if you are getting off. The man's gaze froze. He saw the bus stop afterward. The elderly gentleman got off directly. The man muttered, realizing he was getting off at this stop. Meanwhile, Su Chi, wearing sunglasses, was coughing violently, then shakily reached out his arm, pulling out a white cane. Like a blind person, he carefully got off the bus. The man was stunned. So the person he had been advising was actually blind. A strong sense of guilt and shame overwhelmed him. I truly deserve to die. The bus's announcement sounded again, and without hesitation, he also got off the bus. After all, this was his destination too. Wait, hold on. He ran to catch up with Su Chi, hurriedly apologizing. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were disabled. Su Chi's lips, visible below his sunglasses, gently curved into a mild smile. I don't blame you. After all, I hadn't explained. No, it's all my fault. He shamefully bowed his head. Where do you need to go? I can take you there. The Superpower Association. The man was surprised. Are you also going to the interview? Can't I? Su Chi. You look down on blind people? No, no, no. The man hastily replied. I'm going to the same place, might as well come with you. All right then, Su Chi smiled. Keep this blind person company for a chat. Sure thing. This guy, his name was Duen. He was a college student who often participated in social work and volunteered despite his poor family barely affording college. He often helped others. He was also a fanatic follower of the Superpower 7, worshipping their world-saving deeds and keeping the grand virtues of the Superpower organization in his heart. He also possessed a character of moral goodness. However, in Su Chi's view, a high moral ground wasn't a bad thing, considering it was something he lacked, but this guy was just too paranoid and naive. But also easy to manipulate. From him, Su Chi learned that to attend the association's interview, you needed an invitation. Besides, the invitation isn't about your talent or ability but is purchased with money. A single interview invitation costs 10,000 local currency. It probably took Duen half a year of working and saving to gather that money, and after purchasing the invitation, he couldn't even afford the bus fare anymore. Interesting, an organization that claims to save the world starts by filtering through money, not talent. Su Chi reached out and suddenly felt his body. Oh no! What's wrong? Duen was startled. My association invitation seems to have fallen. Duen's eyes widened. How did it fall? It seems... Su Chi recalled but shook his head and didn't finish. Never mind. How can we just leave it? Duen seemed more anxious than Su Chi. That's 10,000 bucks. Let's hurry back and look for it. The interview is in 20 minutes. We must be quick. Otherwise, if we don't arrive on time, it will be invalid. Su Chi sighed. It's too late. It must have fallen on the bus seat. You called out in a hurry, and I wasn't paying attention. Duen froze. Was it because of him? He was the very reason the other party lost the invitation, and a strong sense of guilt surged through him again. But Su Chi didn't plan to give him a chance to speak and added another blow. Sorry, I don't blame you. It's my fault for being blind, for not being able to see. Su Chi, wearing sunglasses, his face pale, looked off into the distance. I also have a dream of being a superhero, and because of this invitation, I spent all my savings from a year, yet despite it being so close, I couldn't make it. It seems this is my fate. Talking about dreams with young people and reality with middle-aged ones is a surefire way to stir emotions. Duen was instantly emotional, his eyes red, clutching the invitation in his arms. He had caused the other person to lose something so important. Moreover, the other was a blind person, poorer and more distressed than him. Duen's inner hesitation was finally overcome by his kind nature, his hand trembling as he clutched the invitation. Give me a second, Let me go back and look for it. He turned and ran off swiftly. Yet he didn't go far, and after a minute he ran back excitedly. Su Buxian, I found it, your invitation is found. Su Qi had an invitation stuffed into his hand. Next to him was Duan's happy voice. It didn't fall on the bus. I looked back for a while and found it in the grass next to us. Thankfully no one else picked it up. Is that so? That's great, thank you, Duan. Su Qi also tucked away the invitation. A flicker crossed beneath his sunglasses. He certainly didn't have an invitation anymore. And this invitation was naturally Duan's. He had even staged a scene of finding the invitation just so he could accept it without any guilt. The deep creases on it also indicated his inner turmoil and the magnitude of his resolve. Looking at this, I seem a bit inhumane, Su Qi muttered to himself calmly. Looking at all the devouring worlds he had experienced, evil was everywhere. Such pure souls were rare. Purity is a very important trait. The two continued walking forward. Duan was all smiles, recounting various interesting stories as if unaffected by any emotion. We're here. Up ahead is the Superpower Association. Duan stopped. You go in first. Aren't you coming? Duan rubbed the back of his head. I'm waiting for someone. Didn't you just say many people dislike your approach, and you don't have many friends? Ah, my mistake. I urgently need to use the restroom. Su Qi. You can also go inside. Such a large association surely has a restroom. Duan was scratching his head in dilemma, just about to make another excuse. But Su Qi grabbed his arm. Let's go. Duan tried to break free but couldn't get loose. You too. Please show your invitation. Someone was guarding the entrance. Here. Su Qi passed the invitation over. And you? The person turned to Duan. Duan stuttered. I forgot my invitation. It's with me. At that moment, Su Qi extended his hand, pulling out another invitation. Duan's eyes widened. Hadn't it been lost? Keep your pass safe. This person also handed the pass to Duan. He somewhat confusedly accepted it and walked in with Su Qi. Unable to help himself, Duan nervously glanced at Su Qi. That? Su Qi paused before answering. I just felt around and realized the invitation hadn't been lost. His spiritual eyes could create concretes. In short, with enough detailed information, he could conjure anything out of thin air. This invitation was intricate and even had an anti-counterfeit code, quickly decrypted with the help of the Super Dream Protocol, and replicated with the spiritual eyes. It only took a few minutes to create a long-lasting invitation without noticeable flaws. That's great. Duan let out a sigh of relief. It's great that it hasn't been lost. Let's go then. The two walked into the Superpower Association, an extensive garden with internal transit vehicles and logistics staff of all sorts in uniforms. Inside were various buildings, enclosed spaces, and roads with restricted access. Since today was an interview day, many people had come to this association park, most of them young people like Duan, and from their attire they were not wealthy. Meanwhile, an information box also popped up in front of Su Qi. Player has successfully entered the Superpower Association area, triggering the main quest. Current main quest. Pass the interview. Become a member of the Superhumans. Achieve AB rating. Please note, this world is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Every player should be cautious in every aspect. Had the main mission been triggered? Su Qi looked at this main mission information and quietly asked, how difficult is this interview? Did you do some research in advance? Duan nodded. Of course, I looked up a lot of information. It's held every 6 months, attended by many people, but the elimination rate is as high as 95.64%, and the interview stages are extremely challenging, testing strength, speed, superpowers, and overall level. Su Qi kept listening. The Superpower Association guards this world, and despite the high threshold, an invitation costing 10,000, and an extremely low success rate, a large number of people still flock to it, each successful individual being assigned to various levels. Ordinary people can only join the C-level patrol team. Above that are the B-level A-level, and S-level superhumans. They combat various evil forces born within the homeland, as many superhumans seem not to get along with the Superpower Association. We're almost there, Su Chi softly said. Let's go. Let's see this legendary superhuman organization interview. And, I'm blind, so I will need you to look after me a bit. Duin patted his chest. Of course. Su Chi hadn't seen other players around. Probably they had not yet arrived or missed this superhuman interview chance. After all, entering here required an invitation which he could replicate. They would need to find other means. If they missed out, it's likely their main mission would be changed, or could it be that he was the only one who took this ride and arrived here? Of course, these were all speculations since he encountered special events more often. No one knew what might happen. Please show your passes. We need to register your personal data now. Here. Duin quickly handed over his pass, then filled in his details, and through facial recognition and other methods, entered his identity data into the pass, permanently binding it to him. This was a troublesome matter, as they were very strict about identity. If a person without any identification appeared in this city, a patrol team would likely rush over immediately. After all, being without an identity was a crime. Su Chi did not want to expose himself here since everyone around appeared to be superhumans. It was Su Chi's turn. He filled in his data meticulously. Su Buxian. Age, 20. Address, Fando Garden. School, Galadon University. Ability, especially good at staying up late. Su Chi filled it out hastily, not worried about secondary confirmation and facial recognition. Su Chi took off his glasses, and the logistics staff member suddenly gasped, "Your eyes! There's a little problem with my eyes. See if you can recognize it." Okay. The logistics staff stuttered, clumsily starting the recognition process, unable to resist taking another look at Su Chi's left pupil. One gaze at these eyes, and they felt chilled to the bone. At that moment, the logistics staff member suddenly paused. Wait. There seems to be a malfunction with the camera. The screen failed to display successfully. Just a moment. I'll replace it. Okay. Su Chi smiled. Artificial team's counterattack determination successful. This recognition camera had malfunctioned. He steadied the camera, and the Super Dream Protocol was already activated, infiltrating the other party's recognition system with its powerful computing capabilities. As previously mentioned, the computational power of the Super Dream Protocol related to its many subsystems and its degree of proliferation. After experiencing many instances and gradually leaving subprotocols in some of them, its computing power had enhanced. Of course, for now, it could only enhance the computing power. As there was an infinite distance between the 10,000 realms, his current signal couldn't contact various subprotocols. He could only wait for the Super Dream Protocol to evolve step by step as subprotocols rooted and sprouted in various worlds one by one. By that time, perhaps the entire 10,000 realms could be connected together. It took only 2 seconds for all the absurd data Su Chi had just filled in to be entered into the other party's system. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. Logistics personnel quickly made a replacement, then proceeded to identification. Your information has been confirmed. Su Buxian from Fando Garden. Please take your pass. Thank you. Duin was recalling. I didn't even know there was such a place. Stop thinking about it. Let's go. Su Chi and Duin went inside, where the scenery had already started to differ from the outside, with various spaces lining up for testing. The first was the simplest test. Strength. Duin and Su Chi stood next to the 16th machine in the strength test room. Generally speaking, there are many participants in the test, so various pioneering ordinary tests are needed for elimination, unless there is a presence with special abilities, otherwise those physically weaker than the standard would fail here. That's why I train desperately almost every day. Su Chi glanced at Duin through his sunglasses. This guy indeed was very hardworking. His body was actually all muscle, and the most important thing. In this world, there was no limit to how ordinary people could train. In other words, as long as one trained fiercely, the body would surpass its limits, even generating spiritual energy through training, to become powerful. And Duen had also developed spiritual energy, which is why he had been able to tackle the robber with such intense, extraordinary movements previously. To put it correctly, everyone who came here was hardly comparable to ordinary people, having more or less some capabilities. Duen glanced at Su Qi. He couldn't help but worry a bit for Su Qi, because just looking at him, Su Qi's body appeared lean, without much muscle, looking thin and frail, especially being blind, using a guide cane and stopping frequently to cough on the way. That also moved him. What a great, tenacious man. Even like this he came to fulfill his dreams.
Next, Duen.
Duen stood up and walked to the room's door, swiping his pass in front of the machine. Are you ready? Ready. Duen was serious, his eyes revealing a firm determination. He shouted deeply and threw a punch. Su Qi's eyes shifted slightly, observing this guy. Most people hadn't awakened any abilities. Often it was through training to have a robust body, then come to the interview hoping to become a member of the street-level patrol team. However, Duen was somewhat different. The strength just now wasn't that formidable, and the burst of spiritual energy was about a sequence 9 or so. But his power just now had a strange fluctuation. If I'm not feeling wrong, that is his awakened ability. But it seems like nothing happened. Su Qi observed for a while, but couldn't see anything amiss. Yet the machine also gave out the evaluation, Strength Level C. Duen's eyes widened happily. Brother Su, I did it. A Strength Level C rating had already met the standard. Congratulations. And just as Duen was about to say something, the neighboring staff member was somewhat indifferent. Take your pass, and hurry on to the next place. Duen quickly apologized with a smile. Brother Su, I must go ahead. The test is in stages. Once one part is finished, the next one must be entered immediately, so I can't wait for you. You keep it up. Su Qi showed a smile. I will. Also, he is a blind man. Please take care of him. Duen also looked towards the staff member. The staff member remained calm, not responding until Duen had left. Then he looked towards Su Qi. For a disabled person to participate, isn't it a bit childish? Is it not allowed? It is allowed as long as someone has purchased an invitation. Everyone has a chance. The staff member reset the machine. Only even if you pass this one, the subsequent ones are almost impossible high hurdles to overcome. After all, no one would let a blind man, a person without abilities, join. At that moment, on the other side, Bai Yilan and the others were on a different path from Su Qi, who was alone on a bus. There were 11 of them together from the start. And they weren't even in the city. This is a nightmare instance for 12 people. The more people there are, the greater the danger. I have never experienced such a number of people. This instance is definitely not as simple as it seems with the Superpower Association on the surface, and one teammate is still missing. They started to appear in a somewhat backward, remote small town. They had collected a lot of information. They knew the basic information of this world. They were now gathered in the town's bar, where a TV was broadcasting information about the main city where the Superpower Association was located. Superpower Association is in full swing recruiting. An explosion occurred at a bank in Sharp Corner District, and now a C-grade superhuman is on the way to handle it. A hostage situation occurred at Ahi Middle School. The criminal has been shot dead by B-grade superhuman Gauss. A bakery on the main street of the city discovered a large-scale collapse, seemingly a natural disaster. The crime rate today has increased compared to yesterday. But please believe that the Superpower Association will solve all of this. We should probably go to the Superpower Association first, then see what happens next. Meanwhile, the door of the bar was kicked open by a middle-aged man with a cigar in his mouth and a bearded face, looking calmly at them. Going to the Superpower Association is not a good idea. Outsiders, you will definitely be killed. Everyone's gaze sharpened, looking at the middle-aged man behind them. Who are you? I am from Organization X, and I am your savior if you want to know why. Outsiders, please follow me. It was only then that everyone suddenly realized that the other ordinary people around the bar had all fallen into a sleeping state. They glanced at each other. Let's go. Another young man, however, was calm and quietly said, "Since they've come to us, it would be impolite not to go." Everyone knew this young man. Once he spoke, there were generally no objections. The bearded man opened the door. Wise choice. They followed the bearded man onto a bus that looked like a school bus. The bearded man lit his cigar and started the vehicle. "What do you all think?" On the side, a blond man, his eyes fixed on everyone, communicated with others using spiritual energy. Someone shrugged. "What else to think? This is surely a part of the main quest line." "He's just a tool to trigger the main line." This was an ordinary player. "Idiot." The young man unhesitatingly spat out calmly. "You." This person was somewhat angry. The young man slightly narrowed his eyes, looking toward the driver's seat at the bearded man. "He referred to us as outsiders." The meaning of outsiders was broad. People arriving in town from elsewhere were called outsiders, as were those entering from another city, and those arriving from other worlds too. "Bai Yilin, once a king, can't you give some advice?" The young man suddenly looked at Bai Yilin. Bai Yilin, as someone who had not spoken up in the group, now found himself being stared at by everyone, with newcomers curious, not recognizing him, and the old members surprised, not expecting a past celebrity in the team. Bai Yilin looked at the young man, apparently recognizing him. "My advice is, just ask directly." The young man smiled. "That works too." He looked at the bearded man. "Sir, where are you taking us? And why did you just say that contacting the Superpower Association would lead to our death? We don't seem like criminals." From the information they had collected, the Superpower Association was always a peacekeeping presence. The bearded man exhaled a thick puff of smoke, not slowing down at all as he drove on a desolate road. "I'm taking you to a safe place." "As for why?" the bearded man, clenching his cigar, hoarsely whispered. "Because the Superpower Association is a pyramid built of endless blood, horrifying strength, and towering lies. Only those at the tip of the pyramid can make contact with the outside world. Any outsiders are absolutely not allowed to live. They will do everything in their power to eliminate them." The bus had left the town and was making its way down the remote highway, and gradually it ventured deeper into some desolate paths. Everyone's gaze shifted toward it. This place was a barren land nestled among dense jungles, seemingly a hidden spot. As the vehicle traveled through, the passengers soon discovered a secret structure surprisingly established here, with many people standing outside, silently gazing at them, their faces deathly still, their eyes filled with anticipation yet also cautious. "Is this X?" The young man looked toward these people. Each one seemed to have slight spiritual energy fluctuations about them, and from a physical standpoint, they appeared trained, but judging by the mix of ages, they didn't resemble a military organization. Because most were young, adolescents, even children, displaying an innocence unacquainted with the ways of the world. Yet their eyes were wary as they watched them. "What exactly is this place?" Blondie turned to bearded man. "Why are they all kids?" Bearded man did not speak. "Once you enter here and meet the principal of X, you'll understand." Principal. Their eyes shifted again, only then noticing that the building was a school, which explained the many young faces. They followed bearded man off the bus and into the largest building in the center, pushing open the heavy front doors. Bai Yilin hesitated for a moment because as they entered, numerous gazes turned toward them. Unlike the cautious children, these looks were scrutinizing and observant. These were also adults, young people with folded arms, individuals leaning against the wall, and some who calmly watched each one of them, each with a spiritual energy presence starkly different from that of the youngsters. These were the real X. At the same time, Bai Yilin's eyes flickered slightly, realizing these people also served as teachers at this school. No one spoke, they just watched them ascend the stairs. Bearded man gently said, "Please trust us. We have no ill intentions, and soon, you will understand everything." He extended his hand and pushed open a door. Inside, the room was gently permeated by the evening sunlight, the carpet like spilled red wine covering the floor, decorated with antique rosewood, giving off a solemn air. and the first thing everyone saw was the elderly man sitting in a wheelchair, reading under the sunlight by the window. The old man's eyes were deep, his features gaunt, and he seemed unfazed by their entrance. "Please have a seat." Chairs had already been arranged in the room, as if they were all waiting for them. The old man closed his book, revealing a gentle smile. "You may call me Professor Stewart, and of course, I am also the principal of this X-school." The old man might have seemed immobile, but his voice was strong and spirited. "So, Professor Stewart, what is it that you want to tell us?" The young man spoke up softly. Professor Stewart looked at each person. "You'll understand when you look at these." Everyone's attention shifted. Look at what? There were no screens present in the room, nor projectors. But the very next moment, everyone's mind slightly rippled, and an image directly appeared in their minds. This is, by Yilin, mind superpower. Every world is invariably different. Although they fundamentally follow the sequence path, each has its distinctions. And with that, they also saw cruel scenes unravel before them. Massive laboratories, a vast number of test subjects being ushered in, lying on surgical tables being torn apart, incision by incision. Everyone's brows furrowed slightly. All sorts of dark methods were displayed one after another in these images. Not only that, but they also witnessed the legendary superpower 7 committing genocide, their cold, aloof demeanor in stark contrast to their portrayed image as peaceful heroes globally. Is this the Superpower Association? Why would they do something like this? I'm not sure. The old man shook his head calmly. In the past, they merely controlled ruling powers, but in recent years, there seems to have been a change. Research, dissection, live experiments, in just a few years, the number of test subjects who have died is nearly 100,000. The old man's words also gently echoed in everyone's minds. Standing aside, bearded man softly interjected. Of course, all this has been done in secret, and there's more. They are absorbing all individuals who awaken superpowers, some of whom disappear without a trace after joining, while others become high-ranking members of the Superpower Association as if brainwashed, completely becoming one of them. Madness, slaughter, a judgment of will. They seem intent on completely controlling everyone, keeping them firmly imprisoned in their grasp. The old man said quietly, "This place is probably the only one that knows the truth and can provide sanctuary for the superpower children who have not been taken away." Blondie was startled. "So all those kids have superpowers? No wonder. I felt something different about them. Although many can obtain spiritual energy and enhance their bodies through training, in reality, those who are born with superpowers are already ahead of everyone else from the start, rare and precious. I understand your point, and now comprehend the terror and darkness of the Superpower Association. But," the young man narrowed his eyes, "but what does this have to do with whether we're outsiders or not?" The old man's gaze deepened, and his expression turned grave. "John, open that door." Bearded man gave a gentle nod. He approached a bookshelf and shoved a book inwards. Boom, boom, boom. The entire wall flipped over, revealing a silver-white passage. Everyone's eyes held a trace of grave concentration as they could clearly sense a dangerous aura emanating from within. Transparent glass cabinets lined the passageway, containing various objects but no people. What are these? These are artifacts left behind by outsiders who had once come to this world, Bearded Man said softly. Where are they now? They were all killed by those people. The old man seemed to drive his wheelchair with his mind, slowly leading the way. Without exception, anyone from other worlds who ends up here is pursued and killed by them. But to what end? Blondie couldn't help but ask. The old man remained silent. He just sat in his wheelchair and continued forward into the depths of the passage. Sorry, that I cannot tell you yet. They paused slightly, watching the two move ahead. They could only follow with an uneasy heart. The young man lingered at the back, communicating with Bai Yilin through spiritual energy. Bai Yilin, what do you think? Secrets. Bai Yilin had already softly begun speaking, uttering these two words. Only if they don't want the secrets of this world to become known to outsiders, to not be carried back to the present world, would they go as far as to kill the outsiders. The world's secrets? The young man narrowed his eyes slightly. I thought it was the secrets of the Superpower Association. No, because these people also clearly know the secrets but won't tell us. Hence, the secret must be of great importance to them. Bai Yilan's analysis was meticulous. If that's the case, things are getting interesting, the young man said with a playful smile, looking ahead. What sort of extraordinary secrets does this world hold that it fears becoming known? They reached the end of the passage and saw many artifacts from outsiders. It seemed many outsiders had come to this world. Next, I'll show you something courtesy of numerous outsiders. The old man's wheelchair neared the end of the passage and slowly opened a glass door. In the next moment, a burst of spiritual energy erupted. Everyone's pupils shrank. What is this? Before their eyes, there was a room filled to the brim with spirit coins exuding an aura of spiritual energy. All spirit coins. The number must be in the tens of millions. Damn it! Their breathing became labored from excitement, from anticipation. Never had they seen such a quantity of spirit coins. You must understand, these were the universal currency of the present world, and each spirit coin could also replace ascension resources to increase strength. Of course, normally, only the very wealthy would do this. Many would choose to buy various items with spirit coins to enhance their power. However, spirit coins were extremely hard to come by, with instance rewards ranging only from 0 to about 1,000 coins. To acquire a large number of spirit coins, one had to seize every opportunity in each instance to earn and fight for them. Bai Yilan's eyes twinkled even more. He couldn't sit still any longer. He just happened to need a vast amount of resources to restart everything. As for the state of the hustlers sect he had joined, everyone knew about it. Even the operating expenses of the club had to be paid by him. The burden weighed heavily upon him, making him somewhat helpless. The tens of millions of spirit coins before him. Even if the 11 people present were to split it evenly, each would get nearly 1 million. This amount was probably only something top-tier clubs could offer to those super rookies. Though the old man did not turn his head, he seemed to see the expression on each of their faces. Every outsider who has seen this room had almost the exact same look on their faces. The young man narrowed his eyes but quickly regained his composure. He was a genius, not lacking in resources, and although not to the extent before him, he was still worldly. However, he glanced briefly at Bai Yilan and hesitated because he noticed the longing in Bai Yilan's eyes. Bai Yilan, you've seen your fair share of big scenes. Surely you don't have to be like this, the young man paused. I remember hearing about you in our circles. It sounds like you joined a club. Although you have now fallen from grace, your potential and past glories don't just vanish. You'd likely join a major club that's worth your time. Not one so. Very much so. Bai Yilan spat out 2 words. Very much so. We at the Hustlers Club are well aware of the situation. We're struggling to keep going. However, since he had joined, he already considered himself part of the club, and for the sake of future development and growth strategies, it was imperative to get his hands on those millions of spirit coins. So, the blonde guy spoke up. The reason you're showing us all this must be more than just to have a look. The old man gently turned around. Honored outsiders, I hope you can help us. Kill the Superpower 7. Just complete this one goal, and all of these will be your reward. The crowd looked somewhat excited, but the young man signaled for everyone to stay quiet and looked at the old man. I have a question. Every outsider who comes to this world seems to be asked by you all. Why is it that it has to be us to do such a thing? The bearded man gently said, because, within the Superpower 7, there is something. It can completely nullify our superpowers. Its existence is absolute. Anyone born in this world can't circumvent it, which is why we have placed our hopes in the outsiders. No wonder you showed up so quickly. The young man understood. It was also luck, Professor Stewart being a telepath. The place where you appeared was very close to us, so he sensed it. Of course, most outsiders, when they first appear, will actively contact the Superpower Association. Then they're discovered and surrounded. Bai Yilin suddenly said, "Then, esteemed Professor Stewart, have you sensed the presence of our 12th companion?" This time, it was the bearded man and the old man who were surprised. "You have another person?" "Yes," the blond man nodded. "That person was separated from us at the beginning, and we are currently unclear about their whereabouts. However, having one fewer person to split the spirit coins is not necessarily a bad choice." The tall, skinny guy chuckled softly. The young man spat out 2 words again. "Idiot. You goddamn. I've been putting up with you for a long time." The man couldn't help but curse. "Open your eyes and see clearly. Every glass container behind us represents a multitude of outsiders who all died right here. The enemy is stronger, more dangerous than we imagined. This is a lethal foe. An extra person means a better chance of winning." The man's face went from pale to red, but he couldn't say anything back because the young man was making sense. The bearded man shook his head. "If you still have another companion, it might be somewhat dangerous. If they don't use spiritual energy, they might be able to hide for some time. But if they burst their spiritual energy, your presence as outsiders will attract their attention, and the 7 are likely to appear personally and surround them." Bai Yilin frowned. "That could complicate things. Of course, you're not fighting alone. We will do everything in our power to help. As long as that item doesn't appear, we will support you with all our strength." Everyone glanced at each other. "There's no hesitation. Let's go. We'll take this request." The next moment, an information box appeared in front of everyone. "Players, you have triggered a main quest. Please assist Organization X in successfully killing the Superpower 7. Meanwhile, on Su Chi's side, he had finished the tests and met up with Duan. Duan was ecstatic. "I did it! All my tests scored above the standards. A C-grade rating. Brother Su, how about you?" He was quicker than Su Chi and unaware of what had happened, only knowing that it seemed a lot of people had been running around, switching machines. "Me?" Su Chi paused for a moment. "After bursting a few machines, they let me skip the test."
Duan.
At this moment, inside X School, bearded man. "Then please leave one personal belonging with you, anything will do." "Why?" "We have a teacher who can open a teleportation gate through your personal belongings." Next, we'll step into the real reception hall, where other teachers will be waiting to discuss subsequent actions and strategies. This was a matter of urgency. Understood. Everyone left their personal belongings, naturally choosing things of no great value. "I also understand now why there are so many items left here," the young man said softly. The old man sighed softly. "To commemorate the warriors who fought for us, they bore the responsibilities we ought to carry." Everyone curiously stepped into the teleportation gates that had opened. But the old man and bearded man didn't move. "Professor, aren't you showing them that thing?" The old man shook his head. Bearded man sighed. "Are you afraid they'll be scared off?" His gaze turned toward the depths. In a sealed space, a mass of black liquid was pulsating inside a glass container. After all, this is the source of their truly terrifying strength. Behind them lies a dangerous and deadly force. "All newcomers, please pay attention. We are about to depart to execute your first mission. And at the branch of the Superpower Association, those who passed the test and received a C-grade evaluation or higher, after review, could join a C-grade team and head to the branch for related superpower missions." "Brother Su, this is great. We've been assigned together." "Yes, perhaps we're just lucky, or maybe it's fate," Su Chi said lightly. Of course, fate was false. Su Chi had manipulated the Super Dream Protocol to bring Duan over. Separating from his team to meet this guy was definitely not a coincidence, but rather the probability of a special event, allowing Paradise to make their paths cross, perhaps to discover new events through him. Of course, what was most important was that Su Chi's query also seemed to indicate this guy was not so simple. Confusion, unsealed, completely unaware of his own superpower. completely unaware of his own destiny. With other miscellaneous information, Su Chi decided to act alongside him for the time being. Of course, Su Chi himself also had a mission. Player Su Buxian, you have completed the test and successfully entered the Superpower Association. Becoming a trainee newcomer, you have triggered a new main mission. Investigate the secrets of this world. First off, this main mission was a bit odd. It wasn't directed at a specific person or organization but included the entire world. Secondly, there were no clues, no guidance on what players should do next. Su Chi wanted to regroup with his teammates, but currently, he couldn't contact them, nor did he know whether their main missions were different from his. Of course, Su Chi didn't mind, as it seemed there wasn't a total lack of information. The Superpower Association appeared to be the driving force behind it all. At the same time, Su Chi eyed the advertisements and posters all over the street for the Superpower 7. Squinting, and they are probably key to it all. What are you daydreaming about? The C-grade team captain roared. Now, immediately, get on the vehicle and depart. Don't act so sheepish just because you are trainee newcomers. Listen, all of you. Every operation is real and represents the presence of danger. You will have to adapt in such environments and in every operation. Anyone who doesn't perform up to par during this time, get out of the team. Just because you passed the test does not mean you're part of the association. So, give it your all. Got it. Got it. A branch's C-grade team, led by an experienced captain, along with several other team members, followed by their 5 trainee newcomers. Get on the vehicle. Several armed transport vehicles were already waiting. Even at the branch, other teams were hurriedly embarking on missions. What's going on? Su Chi squinted, observing the branch's activity. Just a branch, and yet there are so many teams, and why does it seem so busy? Newcomers, this is the daily routine, said a seasoned team member softly. In this world, crimes and disasters happen all the time, and that is precisely why we exist. Duen was somewhat stirred by these words. Understood. We'll work hard. You newcomers hard-working my ass, get in the vehicle quickly. The captain, puffing on a cigarette, kicked at them rudely and rapidly. The other 4 didn't dodge. Only Su Chi slightly shifted his body, avoiding the kick. The captain took a drag from his cigarette, seemingly surprised. Newcomers who could dodge his kick were few and far between. Let's go. Everyone was already aboard the armed vehicles, sitting in 2 rows. The veteran team members held weapons. In C-grade teams, there were no superhumans. Most relied on their physical fitness and firearms to carry out missions. Captain, where are our weapons? A curious newcomer asked. You want weapons? The captain chuckled. I'm afraid you'll panic and shoot us instead. Remember, this operation is for you to observe and learn. You don't need to take action. Of course, there might be some threats that are not too serious which you can try to handle, but you must follow orders, understood? No, knew it. The rookie stuttered after being scolded. Su Chi watched the scene and fell into deep thought. The truth is, despite the high elimination rate in the Superpower Association, the participation is massive. Thus, even though the chances of getting in are low, there are still a large number of new recruits joining in. According to every half-year cycle, this rate of change might be too rapid, and their training method, which is to directly involve the rookies in operations, though real combat is the best teacher, honestly it's too fast, too hectic. Something wasn't right. What is our operation? Su Chi asked. The captain narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Chi. If it were any other rookie, he might have just grunted and not answered. But the young man in front of him seemed quite steady. Initially, I planned to tell you all on sight after your arrival, to prevent you from becoming fearful right now. But since you asked, I'll tell you, our operation is to investigate a factory in the suburbs, where a death occurred just half an hour ago. The scene is extremely gruesome, so I hope you're mentally prepared now so you do not throw up later. The color drained slightly from the rookies' faces. However, this might not be of any use for you since you can't see. A teammate waved in front of Su Chi. It's okay. Passing the test means I also have the ability to participate in operations. Don't mind me. Just treat me as an ordinary person, Su Chi said with a smile. The captain narrowed his eyes, not saying anything. He didn't really care about Su Chi's eyesight. After all, many people have their own methods of fighting. Sometimes losing an organ could trigger a burst of astonishing potential. Among the personnel of the Superpower Association, Su Chi was far from being the most special one. Additionally, the higher-ups' attitude was consistent as always, allowing anyone who passed the tests to join, regardless of physical disabilities or impediments. Some felt grateful to these standards as they provided them the opportunity to contribute. Others thought it seemed somewhat lax, with a rough approach to nourishing the recruits somewhat negligent. But overall, the Superpower 7 were still wildly admired idols, turned to as a beacon of hope in times of dire crisis. Not only were they extremely popular around the world, but their fame also seethed internally within the organization. Boom, boom, boom. The vehicle sped along the highway. They soon approached the industrial park area, which seemed to be a more secretive and secured zone. Su Chi looked out the front window, noticing the stringent access control, the dense iron fences, and the shocking electric currents. The armored vehicle bore the emblem of the Superpower Association, but they were not granted immediate entry. Bang, bang, bang. Someone knocked on the window. You're the team sent over this time, right? Open all the doors, we need to do a thorough check. The captain paused, puzzled. We are emergency response personnel here to handle an urgent situation. This is my ID to prove our identity. A thorough check seems unnecessary. Knowing that this was an urgent situation, they had hurried over to take action, but were now being stopped here and subjected to a thorough check, which could cause significant delays. I apologize. Yet the man spoke calmly. This is a special area, with many enterprise factories still operating, containing core secrets. As the person in charge here, I must do this. The captain really wanted to curse but knew that arguing or debating wouldn't help and coldly said, Hurry up! As members of the Superpower Association, they were stopped by the manager of a corporate factory park but had no recourse, since those enterprises were pillars, and the Superpower 7 had endorsed many of them. After a thorough check, they finally entered the industrial park, and Su Chi also noticed several large factories in operation, surrounded by security personnel. Here we are. This is the site of the incident. The lead vehicle quickly brought them to a compound factory. For safety, we have currently sealed all entrances and exits to the factory. If you want to enter, you can only come through the back door. Lead the way, the captain stated succinctly. Su Chi narrowed his eyes at the guide, wondering if others had noticed this too, but the guy seemed rather indifferent. It wasn't the kind of indifference that showed in one's expression, but rather an emotional indifference, like observing lab rats. Moreover, Su Chi looked towards the tightly shut factory doors. Within the sealed passage, it seemed like some danger was waiting for them. This is the back door. The man pointed ahead. Now you can enter. Everyone slightly perked up, their gazes fixed on what was ahead, seemingly prepared. But at that moment, the captain shook his head. Wait, are you hiding something? Your report stated 3 people had died. But his expression had grown serious, and with his superior physical condition, he had faintly smelled blood coming from inside the factory. This scent of blood doesn't seem like it's just 3 people. He had felt something was off. Yet, the man calmly said, there were indeed some errors in our report, given that it was made in haste, and the number of casualties wasn't tallied at that time, so a few were underreported. During the period it took you to arrive here, we took a count, and approximately 15 people have died. As soon as the number was mentioned, the captain's expression darkened. Such a number isn't a minor incident. Had I known earlier, I wouldn't have brought the newcomers. But it is still within the responsibilities of a C-class squad. This man still looked calmly at Su Chi and the others. Besides, I think the newcomers also need some training. Moreover, I urge you to be quick. The man glanced at his watch. Our factory can't afford to be shut down for too long. It would lead to significant losses, and if it resulted in such an outcome, I would file a complaint with the Superpower Association. The captain's expression grew even darker. He knew it wasn't any favorable task. The other party's calm yet firm demeanor clearly left him no room to refuse. Complaints from ordinary people were generally rare, but if it came from a major corporation, for him it would likely mean dismissal. "Let's go." The captain said no more. Su Chi also remained silent. Wearing sunglasses, he passed by the man, giving him a glance. Sunken eyeballs, indifferent pupils. The scent of his perfume couldn't mask the pungent smell of chemical compounds from the potions. The man noticed the gaze, but in the next moment, had vanished. His eyes calmly watched as everyone walked in through the back door. "Start recording. The 50-second batch of test subjects has entered. I've already reviewed the physical fitness data of each person. Most meet the standards. It's just a matter of how much data they can provide for me." As everyone stepped into the place. Click, 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 and simultaneously, the lights in the passage all lit up. "Everyone listen," the captain gently began. "Especially the newcomers. This mission is a bit more dangerous than envisioned. The incident report mentioned a hallucinogenic compound leak, leading to employees' psycho, and it's not that simple. So, please be very careful. Newcomers, stay close to us, leaving everything else aside." This captain was indeed a very responsible person, just like other teams, all striving for the stability of the world, making their own contributions. But Su Chi had already vaguely sensed that there was a big problem with the upper echelons of the Superpower Association. This area. It was the taboo industrial park where multiple top-tier enterprises gathered, not just from the security gates and safety measures outside, but also from some invisible presences, all indicating that there were so-called secrets hidden here. Even their entry had been checked over and over again, passing through several barriers. Moreover, it's not just the enterprises. There are also armed forces and factories producing hazardous materials. Humans may become more and more complex beings. But various items and environments were quite simple under the question mark. The most crucial information was almost impossible to hide. "Let's go." The captain led the way, experienced team members were in the middle, and the newcomers followed at the back. According to the report, although their factory has urgently shut down all major entrances and exits, the inside is still in operation. So we need to be careful, not just with the frenzied staff, but also with those dangerous hallucinogens we need to handle. Of course, that stuff is all on the 3rd sublevel. The captain had already distributed the gas masks in advance. He held the maps and other information in his hands, based on the map provided by that person. "This here is the entry area of the factory, which is the 1st level. We need to go down to the 3rd sublevel to shut down the main control. Also, be careful with the frenzied staff." Duan couldn't help asking, "Can they still be saved? What do we do if we encounter them?" The captain calmly said, "We'll decide based on the situation when the time comes." Beep, beep, beep. An electronic ticking was heard in everyone's ears, the sound of an alarm, also seeming to urge them to move forward. It was somewhat noisy, enough to make people feel irritated and disordered. Everyone proceeded along the corridor, the dark passageway leading to the disinfection room, with its gates tightly shut. After all, it was Compound Square, and there were strict requirements for the production and environment inside. Maximum capacity is 10 people. Will go in first, the newcomers follow. Understood. The captain led the other seasoned team members and opened the gate. They stepped in. Of course, they were there to eliminate danger, although this was only the initial phase, to give the newcomers a bit more time to adapt. If things got urgent, they obviously couldn't look after the newcomers. Then the gate closed. The mist of disinfectant filled the air. Among the 5 newcomers, someone whispered, "Everyone, are you nervous? It's our first mission, of course we are. But no matter what, we have to perform well." A young man with long hair said softly, "Probationary newcomers are also facing an assessment. Our action records will be compiled by the captain and submitted. Each mission decides whether we can become official members. That goes without saying. Let's all do our best." Duan was quite positive. Su Chi gave them a glance. These newcomers were actually all young people about the same age as Duan, with no experience and still showing obvious immaturity. "Wait, He seemed to be of the same age as well. It seemed that dealing often with the oldies had influenced him somewhat. Puff! The gate to the disinfection room opened, and the pungent smell of disinfectant poured out. The captain had already entered. Now it was their turn. As soon as Su Chi stepped in, he noticed something off. About 90% of the mist in the disinfection room was disinfectant, but the remaining 10% was an unknown gas. This gas appeared to also carry some activity, able to be absorbed through the skin. Really a problem, huh? Su Chi didn't make a fuss. The surrounding cameras glowed red. If he wanted to delve deeper, he had to keep his intentions hidden for the time being. Instantly, he coated his body with liquid metal, simulating the same color as skin, keeping it out and quietly collected a small bottle, handing it over to Super Dream Protocol for composition analysis. After about 20 seconds, the gate from the disinfection chamber to the new area opened. Everyone also saw the silhouettes of the captain and the others, but for some reason, they all looked solemn and serious, their brows tightly knit. Captain! They had just walked over but couldn't find the words to speak, because the surroundings were full of bloodstains, fragmented corpses, bones piercing into brains, flesh and blood scattered over various machines. Seeing this scene, all the newcomers shivered, their eyes filled with shock. Ugh! Even one of them vomited outright. For them, the shock was immense, especially the strong smell of blood. Even though it was briefly covered by the smell of disinfectant, they could still smell the pungent and foul stench of blood. You just saw it for 3 seconds and vomited? An experienced team member slowly withdrew his solemn gaze from around and looked at the newcomer who had vomited, joking. You've broken the record of newcomers for our team. If you can't handle it, you might as well just stay in the disinfection room. Although the others were also suffering, with a lump in their throats, they too didn't want to show weakness and forcibly swallowed back what they wanted to vomit. No, we should act together. All right. The captain took in this scene, nodding slightly. These were potential future team members. He naturally observed them. And his gaze also fell on Su Chi. Noticing the latter's lips quivering slightly, he showed a hint of a smile. Look, no matter what kind of new recruit it is, when they experience such horrifying and cruel scenes for the first time, they will feel scared. The captain suddenly fell silent because he saw Su Chi slowly blowing a bubble with what was in his mouth. It gradually expanded into a bubble in his line of sight. You bastard! Everyone else's face turned pale. Some even vomited. You're freaking blowing bubble gum. Even the others noticed this and looked over with strange expressions. Brother Su. Duan couldn't help but speak. What's wrong? Do you want one too? No, aren't you disgusted? A pale-faced person said. The gooey gum. It's just like that brain matter. Blarg. The mention of it made him retch with disgust. He can't see anyway. Someone shook their head. Could being blind actually be an advantage in this situation? The captain slowly shifted his gaze away. Let's move on. Continue forward. Although his expression didn't change much, he had already sensed that something was amiss. This was just the first level. The area they saw right after opening the passage was already littered with mangled corpses and flesh. What exactly happened here? The reports they submitted. Did they not tell the truth? They took over 20 steps. The entire factory seemed much larger than anticipated, no, several times larger. Just the first level alone had already taken them nearly 5 minutes to walk. There don't seem to be any corpses along the way. A new recruit with a pale face now felt much better. It seems like the problem might not be too big. The captain didn't speak. Aside from the gruesome scene they encountered at the disinfection room, he hadn't seen any new corpses either, so his furrowed brow relaxed somewhat. But he said in a deep voice, "Don't jump to conclusions too early, stay alert." He held a blade in his hand, and the other experienced teammates were equipped with firearms and military knives, which could prove that the captain had superior strength, with a physical fitness level at least above Sequence 9. There's a big problem here. Su Chi observed his surroundings, and under the faint light, he could discern many details. There are quite a few secrets here, of course. Along with those were danger. As their strength increased, the instances they encountered varied in forces, backgrounds, and the strength of the bosses, with the leader of a Class C team having top-notch strength of Sequence 9. Then what about above that? How powerful were the Superpower 7? Since arriving in this world, he hadn't made contact with them yet and didn't know where the team members were. Su Qi naturally wouldn't stir up the waters. First, he would see if he could infiltrate the high ranks within the Superpower Association. His real goal was still the world secrets mentioned in the main quest. There's something here, someone suddenly exclaimed. He bent down and picked up a broken syringe. What's this? It's labeled DX515 compound, but it's empty inside. There's a line of text here too. It reads, the person read the words slowly and carefully. Better to mutate into. The captain approached and squinted. Mutate into what? It's not finished. The person shook their head. But Su Qi suddenly spat out 2 words. Into a rampant monster. Duan was stunned. Brother Su, how did you know? Su Qi said softly. This DX515 has not been confirmed, but given its presence here, it's probably the same substance that turned the employees violent. It seems he encountered something, knew he couldn't escape, so he chose to inject it into himself. This might well be a reasonable speculation, a teammate nodded. If that's the case, then the corpses that fell in the disinfection room might have been people who had barely escaped from the 2nd or 3rd level, desperately reaching the disinfection room door, only to find that its gate had been urgently closed, and so they were cruelly killed. We haven't even seen a single intact corpse. Their expressions grew somber. It must have been a horrific massacre, a terrible slaughter fueled by countless moments of despair. So these big corporations actually sealed everyone in here? They took their time inspecting us while we were on our way, delaying our rescue. Duan clenched his fists. How can they do this? The captain narrowed his eyes, about to speak, when Su Qi kicked Duan in the butt and said calmly, use that saintly brain of yours to think. When has there ever been a rescue after lockdown? The moment they shut it down almost meant total annihilation for everyone here. We're not here for a rescue, just to clean up the mess for these corporations. How is that possible? Duan was stunned, and he quickly turned to the captain. The captain looked at Su Qi calmly and said, although it's unpleasant to hear, indeed, it's not unheard of. However, we still adhere to our principle of protection, to prevent dangers from spreading and harming other people and our world. That is our duty, and the same principle that many of our superhumans fighting on the front lines stubbornly uphold. Of course, everything we've seen here will be reported truthfully, and I believe the Superpower Association will handle it. That's good. Su Qi laughed lightly. He said it was good, but he was actually completely disillusioned. The ass and the brain were communicating. One eats and the other shits. A trivial matter to handle. It was now blatantly clear that these big corporations and the Superpower Association had deeply ingrained connections, with various dangerous compounds deeply involved in cooperation. And there were enough loopholes to make a cat paradise. Now, Su Qi was almost certain. There were major problems with the Superpower Association, and the substances in the DX515 compound also seemed to have familiar components. But now is not the time to discuss this. Su Qi said softly, if every level's doors are tightly shut, then guess, where's the monster that killed those people now? As soon as Su Qi spoke, everyone's faces changed slightly. The captain's expression didn't change much. He was already holding a military saber. Prepare for battle. There's already sound approaching from afar. He had realized it even before Su Qi spoke. And now, his keen hearing had picked up the noise. Newbies, stand back. Bang, bang, bang. Sounds of heavy steel rang out, footsteps stomping on the ground. Their gaze was solemn, looking towards the distance. Outside a glass door, 3 black shadows suddenly smashed into it. Shattered glass flew everywhere. Are these rabid employees? Everyone's faces drastically changed. In their sight, the 3 black shadows bore no resemblance to employees. Each shadow was very abnormal, with various black spots covering their bodies densely, scattered all over, even on their faces. And where the black spots took root, The flesh would swell up like an abscess. Densely packed black abscesses, disgustingly oozing. Moreover, they also possessed astonishing strength and a wild killing intent. Boom! The three figures charged at them. Captain, amidst the crisis, commanded, "Cover with firepower." A barrage of bullets shot out, creating blood splatters. The speed of the oncoming figures instantly slowed down. But they could see that bullets were not highly effective against them, and even saw the wounds on their bodies gradually growing flesh. What kind of monsters are these? Damn it! If bullets don't work, then kill them directly. The captain was the first to rush out, his military saber bursting with incredible strength in the dim light. The other experienced team members also sprang into action. Their combat abilities could not be underestimated. In an instant, battle unfolded between them. Cold gleams and flesh came into contact. Streaks of blood were drawn. The black abscesses were somewhat lively, as if the liquid inside was pulsating. Su Chi, watching this scene, tapped the guide cane that his dark star had transformed into. Why do I feel like this is getting more familiar? At this moment, in another highly confidential laboratory cloaked in cold metal, the white walls with various electronic components were monitoring everything. On one large screen, it displayed everything happening in the factory, specifically the team that had encountered an attack. The young man with sunken eye sockets who had guided them was now clad in a researcher's attire, calmly observing everything on the screen. They've encountered DX-515 Dark Ones. These 3 Dark Ones do not have high combat power. It looks like they will be dealt with soon. Someone softly said, "Normal, this team has high strength. Naturally, they won't be stopped here." To be accurate, the stronger the arriving team, the more it suited their plan. It is essentially a breeding ground. Inject the DX-515 compound to become a Dark One, battling and devouring each other to develop the strongest among them. The young man coldly watched all this. Of course, ordinary people are not strong enough. Only superhumans can be the best test subjects for the DX-515 compound. This was not the first time this happened. Allowing a place to be invaded by DX-515, turning a large number of ordinary people into hosts for the Dark One, then secretly dispatching a lower team from the Superpower Association to handle the situation, nurturing ever more powerful Dark Ones through repeated battles and despair. This group was no exception. At that moment, a 3-dimensional image suddenly appeared out of thin air. When everyone in the laboratory saw this person, they immediately fell silent, not daring to speak more, and their expression shifted from relaxed to somewhat tense. "How are things going?" A magnetic voice sounded, the tones slightly lazy, as a woman's voice emerged. "Has the progress with DX-515 reached the standard for universal application?" The young man calmly looked at the ravishing figure of the woman, one of the Superpower 7, but being a core researcher, he naturally had seen her true form and remained unmoved as he stated, "There's still a bit to go. The progress is moving forward, but the needed data and time are substantial." "That won't do." Her voice suddenly became cold. "That great being will soon come to inspect our outcomes. You must accelerate the progress. That will result in many deaths. It's hard to explain to the populace." A middle-aged man spoke up tremblingly. The next moment, his expression changed abruptly, his mouth gaping open, his body trembling uncontrollably, collapsing to the ground, clutching his throat as if he had lost the capacity to breathe. The young man watched the middle-aged man turning blue and eyes whitening due to suffocation. He spoke in a deep tone. "He's my assistant. If you want the progress so soon, then don't kill any researchers close to me." The woman's finger paused mid-air in the hologram, silent for 2 seconds. The middle-aged man could finally breathe. He gasped heavily for air. "Don't get angry, our chief researcher. I just wanted to give him a reminder." The woman smiled, retracting her finger. "First, we don't care about the public at all. Being the masters of this world, are we supposed to explain ourselves to a bunch of ants? Second, those behind you must be the new batch of test subjects. Accelerate the progress. I want to see new developments today, otherwise, I may have to take action." Her words carried a light smile, yet they were chillingly indifferent. The young man didn't speak, watching as the holographic image slowly faded. He reached into his top pocket for his glasses and put them on, the high prescription lenses making him appear more profound. He had just the physical constitution of an ordinary person, with no abilities besides research. As a member of the Superpower 7, terrifying abilities like just demonstrated on the middle-aged man, could kill him easily from a distance. What should we do? The middle-aged man had struggled up from the floor, his voice hoarse as he looked at the young man. Then, activate DX 515 Generation 2. The young man watched everything on the screen. His eyes lowered as if apologizing or confessing. He whispered, "I'm sorry." On the other side of the factory, phew! A military saber directly pierced through the brain of the last Dark One in front of him. The creature in front of him was completely dead. The last one, resolved. The captain maintained a steady stance on the ground. Other senior team members also ensured there were no other dangers around. The battle happened quickly and ended quickly. After all, these three deformed monsters, though filled with a violent killing intent, realistically did not pose a sufficient challenge to them. These creatures can no longer be regarded as merely violent workers. Damn capitalists! What the hell have they been researching? Captain, we should report everything here. Captain leveled. I know. Be quiet. The mission is temporarily halted. Everyone head back the way we came. We'll talk once we get out. What had transpired here exceeded their anticipated level of severity. That damned young man had lied. This place was not caused by some hallucinogens inducing violence, judging by the monster's lethal intent and formidable strength. They were studying some kind of dangerous, uncontrollable compound for use on humans, a thoroughly prohibited substance. It's no use. Su Chi tapped his guide cane, gathering everyone's gaze. From the moment we stepped in here, we were already trapped. Somebody's expression darkened slightly. How do you know that? The so-called backdoor control panel has already lost control. Once the gates of the disinfection room came down, there should have been no other means to open it. A team member frowned tightly. How could it have lost control? Is that so? With his guide cane pointed toward the three corpses of the monsters, Su Chi spoke softly. The workers that were killed by them also harbored the same desire to escape as you all. I believe he understood the layout here better than you. In their despair, they chose the only path to survival, yet they couldn't open the exit door. There are two possibilities. One is that they didn't have enough time to operate the controls before the monsters caught up and killed them. The second is... Su Chi hadn't finished speaking. The captain picked up right where he left off, his voice hoarse. Someone didn't want them to get out. He had actually guessed that this was the most likely scenario, but he still wanted to try if there was even a sliver of hope. Let's have the two of us go and check it out. You rest here for the time being and see if there are any other methods, a team member said, turning to leave at the captain's signal. After all, the factory was quite large, and it would take a few minutes to get back. What should we do if we can't get out? Are they planning to imprison us in order to cover up what's happened here? A newcomer murmured. This is not imprisonment. The long-haired young man spoke solemnly. They want us all dead. How can this be? Someone said in despair. Then we really can't leave. I had just joined the Superpower Association filled with hope. Lift your head, my friend. Duen clenched his fist. We still have a chance to leave. We must report the darkness here. You are good at painting a rosy picture. However, the despair will probably be greater when the time comes. Having barely escaped, only to find out that the very entity they hope to report to is the manipulator behind everything. Captain. Su Chi, wearing sunglasses, coolly looked at the captain. There should be a description of the main control area on that map, right? The captain pulled out the map they had put away earlier, squinting slightly. Yes, that's right. It does exist. And there's a chance to open all the gates. But how did you know? I've worked in an electronics factory. It's always like this. Working was indeed true. but the existence of the main control area was information he had seen for himself. The other party offered a way out, wanting them to go deeper into the third level for the sake of survival. Such a plan was executed with control over the big picture, playing with people's hearts and showing disregard for life, as well as a despair of having no chance whatsoever. Su Qi didn't know how many people had been subjected to this plan, but he knew. At least there was someone behind them wielding the chaotic liquid. Chaotic emerged for the first time in Evil Town, then was taken by him. According to the plan left by the Venerable, Chaotic was controlled by the Abyss Power, an important and powerful object held by the Venerable. Leaving aside these guesses that came from unexpected gains, I have reason to believe, could there also be a Venerable behind them? Venerables were numerous by themselves. Su Qi had become one of them, but he still hadn't figured out what was hidden in the deep pools of the Abyss Church. So, upon realizing this, Su Qi did not stir up the snake in the grass in this world. The enemy was in the dark, and so was he. Without clear knowledge of the enemy's strength, he chose to delve deeper into exploration first. Of course, this was certainly not because of any unrelated speculation like his pupil's strength being uncontrollable, fear of being exposed by the Abyss Church, or fear of his identity as a despicable person, and the evil god causing an uproar following the power of the pupil. What a joke. Evil god, good friend, good brother. Of course, before completely mastering that strength, he would not consult its venerable self. Those two also quickly returned, shaking their heads. We tried, but the control panels for the disinfection room gates are all out of order. Then it seems we only have one recourse now to head to the main control of the third level, the captain said with a grave expression, looking at the newcomers. And you must prepare to go into battle. Distribute weapons to the newcomers. From the backpack, various combat knives were pulled out. Why not guns? Do you know how to use them? Can you aim? A team member rolled his eyes. Your physical qualities have already far surpassed those of ordinary people, and your 5 senses responsiveness has greatly increased. You're better off using knives than guns, and I don't expect you to kill the enemy, just to defend yourselves. The captain said softly. Also, these monsters, although they possess strong healing abilities, have the same fatal weakness as humans, their hearts. Su Qi didn't refuse the knife that was passed to him. He tossed it directly to the Dark Star to devour. He fed the Dark Star anything, so the Dark Star could also transform into anything, even if it lacked any attribute or function. But with the enhancement of the Dark Star, even the guide cane in his hand attained the quality to be used as a primary weapon. The team continued to move forward. The first floor. It seemed that aside from those 3 monsters, there were no other creatures, and the team managed to reach the elevator to the second floor as they wished. The other side has only given us the method to activate the elevator to the second level. The captain looked at the map and information. It seems there was premeditation, luring us toward the third level. However, knowing it was a trap, they still had to step inside. After the captain input a series of symbols as the password on the control panel of the gate, the elevator leading to the second floor thunderously opened. Let's go. The elevator was spacious inside, large enough to accommodate 3 big trucks, meant for transporting giant cargo. Once the team stepped in, they noticed bloodstains on the ground, but no corpses in sight. With a rumbling noise, the elevator gate closed and began to descend. Each floor seemed to be at a considerable distance from the next. Just descending to the second floor, one could feel the elevator's speedy descent, at least 5 meters per second, which continued for nearly half a minute. Then they heard it. Clack! The mechanical gears inside the elevator made a heavy sound. The team members felt a jolt under their feet. A chime indicating arrival sounded. Here it comes, the captain warned in a deep voice. The elevator gate rumbled open. The shrill sound of the motors made everyone unconsciously shiver. And at the next moment, the team's faces turned pale. The entire second sublevel was a large experimental area constructed of numerous glass tanks. And yet simultaneously, it was a purgatory, filled with an abundance of corpses and flesh splattered everywhere. How many people died here? Su Chi's voice came through. The facility's scale could house thousands. Judging by the current situation, it's possible they either became those monsters or were all killed. Duan trembled a bit. Although afraid and disgusted, more than anything, anger surged within him as he clenched his fists. Those beasts! Su Chi looked at Duan with surprise. When this guy became emotional, that strange strength also started to fluctuate, and he even faintly noticed that some objects around seemed to have moved imperceptibly due to the recent disturbance. The elevator to the third sublevel requires a pass card, but we probably won't be able to find one now. The captain looked towards a blood trail in front of him. So we have to go through other passages. The map indicated a staircase leading downward, located in an area towards the left side of the second sublevel. Just as the captain was about to start moving, a newcomer suddenly turned pale and vomited profusely. I can't take this. Can we wait for a moment? Just a moment? The captain looked at him calmly and said, Move. Then he stepped forward without any hesitation, followed solemnly by other experienced team members without a word. Why is he like that? Someone's eyes widened. Don't you guys get it yet? I really resent being lumped with fools like you. The long-haired young man gripped his military knife. This is a matter of life and death. There's no time for you to adjust. They probably won't protect us from now on either. If you want to live, you can only rely on the knife in your hand. If you can't manage, then you die. The long-haired young man briskly followed suit. Duan looked towards Su Chi. Brother Su, it's inconvenient for you. Stay behind me. I'll lead the way. Su Chi responded with a laugh. Okay. The cameras around quietly shifted, watching their every move, as if observing prey walking into a trap. At the same time, what the team didn't know was Su Chi's Super Dream Protocol had already silently invaded the control panel of the sterilization room and the elevator gate control panel on the second sublevel. The Super Dream Protocol had strong adaptability and could infiltrate various networks, utilizing the collected information to analyze any matter within the 10,000 realms. So, Su Chi would have the Super Dream Protocol collect information as much as possible whenever he arrived in a new world. Just like that bottle of DX515, about 35% of its components had been analyzed, and the remaining elements were unique to this world and beyond analysis. Of course, the most crucial point was Su Chi recognized something familiar within. Indeed, it is chaotic, except it's a 10-fold diluted, chaotic liquid. Plus, they've added some messy stuff, seemingly to suppress its volatility, trying to develop a stable enhancing potion. Su Chi narrowed his eyes. All in all, everything remained unclear, but he had a hunch that it might relate to the secrets of this world. The group moved swiftly, raiding the corridor filled with flesh and blood, and amidst them, black shadows kept popping up. The number of these monsters had clearly increased. Move fast. Fall behind and you're dead. No one will save you. The captain's voice was cold and merciless, but it was indeed the best approach under the current circumstances. They had to maintain speed to avoid attracting more of these monsters. Otherwise, once surrounded, they may not face total annihilation, but they would certainly pay a price to break through. The team gritted their teeth, growled, and fought desperately. Only Su Chi was slacking. He could flip this place single-handedly, but instead, he played the actor. After all, his Super Dream Protocol needed to connect to the opponent's network and spend some time infiltrating for a successful breach. Therefore, he had to enter the control room, which was the hub of their internal structure. Before this, Su Chi naturally could not let the numerous cameras in the area detect any unusual activity. The infiltration had to be conducted silently, or else if discovered midway, it would likely be proactively interrupted. Of course, the fact that everyone was able to escape the monster's siege through hair-raising dangers was also thanks to Su Chi secretly lending a hand. These people and Duan shared the same tenacity. The captain's firm speech about protecting this world, about upholding principles, had left an impression on him. It showed just how well the Superpower Association performed in this aspect. They used countless sufferings to surround a swamp, acting as a beacon of hope for others, entombing layers of terrifying darkness deep within the swamp. Exploring it meant going in deep. And once you go in deep, you'd get swallowed, buried, never to see a speck of light again. On the other side, based on information provided by our insider within their association, a large number of teams are being deployed from the Superpower Association headquarters, and squads from all branches are also urgently summoned. But actually, at least 2 or 3 of these teams are poor experimental subjects being sacrificed. The so-called emergency response is nothing but a dark lie fabricated to perfect those terrifying drugs. The woman, clad in a trench coat, with white pupils, seemed to see to a very distant place. Standing beside her were the people with beard and Bai Yilin, who were 50 kilometers away from the Superpower Association headquarters. The woman's ability allowed her to possess any animal without spiritual wisdom, using their perspective to gather information. Her eyes now were identical to those of an eagle. She was probing the movements within the Superpower Association headquarters. DX 515 The youth spoke softly. Their information all came from the organization before them, X, gradually uncovering numerous secrets, including the DX 515 potion. This potion is a dangerous power, mysterious and unknown. The woman said softly, the Superpower 7 rely on that power to possess strengths far exceeding ours. And ordinary people injected with this potion gain exceptionally superior physical qualities. But if they cannot endure it, they turn into crazed monsters, what we call the Dark Ones, more importantly. What is it? A large number of ordinary Dark Ones fighting each other. Their special fluid continually divides, aggregates, and strengthens, and there is a very small chance that a special Dark One will emerge. It has consciousness, awakens its own superpower, and more importantly, this special Dark One's body will develop a strange totem. Bai Yilin and the youth simultaneously shifted their gaze, both surprised and solemn. Totem. No wonder they were sensitive. Anything involving totems indicated some sort of religious and powerful church or an existence with a terrifying shrine. Within the present world of the 10,000 realms, totems were the most iconic. What does it look like? The bearded man glanced at them, his pupils moving slightly. As expected, these outsiders were just as interested in the totem as other outsiders before them. Although they couldn't leave this world, being confined here, they had nevertheless learned much about the 10,000 realms from various outsiders. Each outsider came from their own world, from the present world, and knew various details about it. A pattern like this. The woman manifested the pattern. Bai Yilin and the rest looked on, most showing confusion. The pattern in front of them was 3 wavy lines forming a wave pattern, composed of black, like a tide of darkness. They did not recognize it. The woman then put it away, letting out a sigh. Just like the other outsiders, they did not recognize the pattern. So, they wouldn't be able to find out what kind of existence the person behind Superpower 7 really was. Anyway, every week, some place would have an incident, a team would be sent on a secret mission, and then there would be no sign of life. For the outside world, they would believe that the team sacrificed themselves fighting a threat. And then the A-rank superhumans from the upper echelons would take care of the threat, earning the gratitude and cheers of countless people. But in reality, everything was just because they were experimenting with these potions, trying to perfect them, while creating special Dark Ones. And now, Bearded whispered, we need to take the first step, which is to eliminate one of their core A-rank teams. After all, anyone A-rank and above is a member of Superpower 7's sinful gang. No exceptions. After all, only their people could get into the upper levels. What's the specific plan? Bai Yilin asked softly. According to our informant, they will depart from the headquarters, transporting a batch of special cargo to a key research location. We need to take them out quickly, disguise ourselves as them, enter that place, and destroy everything within, Bearded said sternly. If we do this, our other teachers in various locations will be able to take action and break this enforced tranquility. The young man paused. This idea is good, but it won't be that simple to disguise ourselves as them. Of course, it's simple. There was another person from Organization X beside them who stretched out his hand. I can make you look like any person for a short period. The next moment, his appearance changed into Beardits, then into Blondies and into Bai Yillen's. That settles it then. There shouldn't be any problems. The young man nodded, glancing at Bai Yillen with curiosity. This guy had been silent all this time and was frowning slightly as if pondering something. When the time for action approached, he walked over to Bai Yillen. Brother Bai, were you startled just now? Bai Yillen paused briefly. That totem. The young man smiled gently. I thought it might have something to do with the Abyss Church. They were no rookies. According to Paradise's setting of pollution value, every instance they experience has a tiny chance of encountering related incidents. And once they do, it means both rich rewards and pollution points, and unimaginable, inescapable dangers. After all, in some instances, defeating the boss meant complete closure, and the chance of returning to that instance, to that world, was almost zero. But once they conflict with any force of the Abyss Church, any world they have invaded, their names would appear on the Universal Bounty List, and any related worlds would face the danger of being hunted by the Abyss believers. That was the reason they would react so seriously whenever they encountered a totem. After all, the influence of the Abyss Church could be said to truly span the 10,000 realms. Exactly, Bai Yillen murmured softly. That pattern looked somewhat dark and evil. This might not be so simple. The young man nodded, looking towards Bearded and the other two. They're hiding something. He patted Bai Yillen's shoulder. Anyway, this is the Nightmare team. We have to give it our all. Bai Yillen didn't respond but watched the young man walk away as he fell into deep thought. He had been thinking, remembering as if he had seen that pattern somewhere before. Or at least something similar. The first person he thought of was Su Buxian. Brother Su, he seems to have several small patterns on him, including the weapons he used in the dueling ground, but that must be tattoos and personal preference. After entering the game, one could maintain their original appearance while altering about 20% of it, like skin surface patterns. So, having those modifications is normal. It would be weird not to have made any changes. Not to mention female players using beauty filters, even brawny men would make their biceps look a bit larger, even though it wouldn't enhance their attributes. That guy! Bai Yillen's eyes twitched slightly, fragments of memory seemingly capturing something. It was that bespectacled man. On his puppet, there seemed to be a similar pattern on its back. At that time, she didn't recognize it, but now, on closer inspection, there seemed to be some resemblance. Yet there were differences. It seems that we can only get the answers from the elder behind them. Bai Yillen looked at the men with goatees and others. The others aside, what they said, although somewhat concealed, was true. And the various items collected from that place did indeed come from various worlds. But she always felt those items were somewhat ancient, or had never been seen. But the most important point was that those spirit coins, a world that hasn't had contact with the outside, how could it possibly produce such a quantity of spirit coins? Moreover, based on her observations, these spirit coins were likely only a small part of their stock. That elder possessed great wisdom, a remarkable and elusive aura, and moreover intuition. Intuition made Bai Yillen instinctively feel that they had only touched the surface, that the true main quest had not been fully unveiled, that the true appearance of this world had not yet been encountered. And even more crucially, damn it, where had Brother Su gone? We're ready. The woman's serious voice came through. I've seen their convoy set off. They're taking a deserted path, and there are 5 ability users with them. No rush. Let them drive for a little while. Drop their guard and get some distance from headquarters before we move. Their expressions were tense. After all, this was also an important operation for them involving their fates. Nothing could go wrong. Quick, quick, quick. On the other side, the pharmaceutical factory. The captain roared low, his military knife already stained with copious amounts of blood and flesh. These monsters surged around them, assaulting them with speed, killing intent, and fatal attacks of all sorts. Everyone roared fiercely, retaliating against the attacks, narrowly escaping encircling traps after each wave. They continued running toward the third level underground. These monsters are getting stronger. Next, on the third level, can we really... A newbie, bloodied and trembling, spoke. They had fought bravely, but they were losing hope. With more and more monsters, more powerful means of attacks, they always felt they were standing on death's horizon. The next step could send them plummeting. Shut up! The captain snorted coldly. Anyone who wants to give up can just throw their weapons away and quit. We don't need you. Who's giving up? A long-haired young man exploded, his spiritual energy swelling with a barely discernible surge. I swear, I will uncover everything here. Duan's eyes were bloodshot, swinging with all his might at the incoming monster. Su Qi also paused, stabbing a monster to death with his guide cane. Good. Everyone's spirited. I'm satisfied. The captain gave him a sideways glance. That was his line to say. From the beginning, he had a sneaking suspicion that something was off. Every time they faced various difficult and fatal sieges, they would always turn the tide. They had managed to escape successfully without paying the price in lives. Now he took another look at Su Qi. This guy didn't have a single drop of blood on him. But he could no longer concern himself with Su Qi. These monsters exhibited remarkably strong combat abilities, and each seemed to vary, seemingly bearing the self-talent and potential of people injected with potions. More so, every time they killed a monster, the fluids from the monster's body seemed to be absorbed by other nearby monsters, becoming stronger and stronger. He had already felt the terror of these potions. It was unimaginable what exactly this factory was researching, and the source of its funding must be incredibly vast. And Su Qi saw even more. His attention was on Duan, whose rate of growth surpassed the monsters, and the trend was still on the rise. Everyone was already approaching the 3-level area nearly 200 meters underground. Although a large number of monsters kept besieging from all sides, these were the products of the DX-515 drug modification, yet they hadn't managed to leave anyone behind. Of course, one reason was Su Qi was holding the line. Be careful. It's coming from above. Another monster attacked from the ceiling, its body covered with dense black spots of various shapes. Get lost! Duan roared lowly, swiftly stepping forward and charging. A military saber in an unbelievable posture, skewering the monster. This guy, is he on drugs? The newcomer beside him stared woodenly at Duan. Even the team members were somewhat surprised. This kid, I remember when we first entered the first layer, he wasn't like this. The captain kicked out, sending a monster flying, and raised his eyebrows slightly. His potential has been constantly stimulated, growing rapidly in strength through battle, a remarkable talent. But why is he only rated a C-class? The captain shook his head, not clear on that himself. There were many things now that he couldn't figure out. Everything was beyond sight. We're about to reach the 3rd level. The captain had seen the gates to the 3rd layer. Stop staring blankly. Get ready to move. The monsters behind them collided with the walls and staircases, their thunderous descent continuing down. Everyone hurriedly rushed toward the gates of the 3rd layer. They had been constantly fighting and fleeing, with hardly a moment's rest. Even if there might be a terrifying threat on the 3rd layer, it was still their place of hope. Brother Su, you go first. I'll cover our retreat. Duan was still concerned about Su Qi. Be careful. Duan suddenly noticed a short monster at a shadowy angle, swooping ghost-like towards Su Qi's back. He had just roared, intending to rush over, when the next moment, snap! A light sound exploded. Su Qi's guide cane gently tapped on the monster's head, which struggled wildly against the wall, utterly unable to move. Don't cover the rear anymore. Su Qi looked at stunned Duan. And you can't keep killing either. Ha! Duan was taken aback. Look at your neck. Duan was slightly startled, suddenly noticing a large number of black spots on his neck, writhing like flowing pustules, having appeared at some unknown time. Everyone else watched the scene with surprise. You all have them too, Su Qi said quietly. Everyone quickly checked themselves. Indeed, They looked at the spots on their bodies with their eyes wide and horror-stricken. Why? Do we have this too? Were we infected?
No.
Su Chi said, Rather, you've absorbed them, am I right, Captain? They had reached the gates to the third layer, with the captain still trying to decipher the code to open them. Hearing Su Chi mention this, he said nothing, but his expression was very grave, as he slightly lifted the sleeve on his arm. That's right. It was covered with black spots. The captain had discovered this earlier, but given the situation and the team's condition, they had to fight these monsters to move forward, and there had been no opportunity to bring it up. At that moment, the rumbling sound erupted. The noise from the third layer's gate and the roar of the monsters behind intertwined. The team roared out. After throwing a few grenades, they directly stepped into the gate, and the captain immediately reversed course, closing the gate. Clang! The heavy door fell to the ground at that moment, brutally crushing a few monsters trying to crawl into mush. Blood gushed onto the floor, but the team had grown accustomed to it. The newcomers only had time to gulp down air with no time to feel sick. Captain, what exactly were you talking about just now? The long-haired young man asked the captain, his voice quivering. The captain didn't sit down, although behind the third level's gate was a spacious yet closed corridor with no corpses or monsters in sight. He just leaned against the wall, remaining vigilant. His expression somber. He began in a hoarse voice. Every time we kill these monsters, some of their black liquid transfers into our bodies. I've tried various methods of killing them, whether by shooting or using close combat weapons. But the captain shook his head. It's all useless. Just like the grenades we just threw, as long as the monsters die, it's like a host transfer. Those black spots will slowly crawl onto our bodies. The team member who threw the grenades looked down at his palm. Indeed, it was being slowly infected. At first, they were just small spots like moles and didn't attract any attention. But as time went on, like a tide, the spots spread outwards, increasingly blossoming. So are we doomed as well? The team still confronted the monster's onslaught, their faces lined with threads of despair and helplessness. We might turn into those monsters or not even make it out at all, everything being under their control. The captain sighed internally. He wanted to tell the truth. He couldn't see any chance of survival. But once spoken, the team's morale would plummet to freezing. Stay calm, everyone. Haven't you also become stronger? Su Chi said gently. If it weren't for these black factors, as we shall temporarily call them, you wouldn't have gained stronger healing powers, stronger recovery capabilities, and you would have already collapsed halfway to take a long sleep. The team paused, indeed. They felt they were inexplicably getting stronger, fighting more valiantly as time went on. It just hadn't been an overnight leap in power that was outrageously high. Duan was completely different. He was the most outstanding among them. Su Chi's initial judgment suggested that after absorbing the black substance produced by the potion, Duan's physical condition had improved more than fivefold. All sorts of potential abilities were being awakened, with his combat level skyrocketing during actual combat. And after gradual fights, the other spirits would be affected to some extent. They would become excited, tense, and negative emotions would increase, sometimes to the point of recklessly disregarding their teammates. Only Duan remained unaffected. In all kinds of crises, he prioritized others first. His purity of heart could be said to be extremely high. In other words, he was the perfect match for this potion. Of course, the most important point was that there was a strange force in Duan's body that suppressed all the bizarre mental effects brought by the black liquid. This strange power had caught Su Chi's attention from the moment it first appeared. And now, Su Chi had finally seen the true nature of that strange force in Duan, displayed on the screen as two characters. Divinity, divinity, those two words were not simple. Typically, divinity was found in gods or demigods, or in the descendants with divine blood, and not just any lineage. It had to be one with blood closely related to the divine or inheritance of divine artifacts. Considering, in the present world, it seemed that many things were recovering. Su Chi had reason to believe that ancient beings, forces, and worlds previously in slumber were unveiling their ancient seals. In short, compared to the recovery of gods, their subordinates, divine sons, and the like would first emerge in the present world. Talking about gods is annoying. Su Chi touched his chin. Can't they come up with something new? Which god is behind this guy? The superpower god. The benchmark of this world was some special superpowers. They even downplayed the enhancement of physical condition, but the development of abilities had been brought to the extreme. It looks like the secrets of this world might be showing their signs. And Su Chi looked down the passage. There's also an invasion of something like chaotic, though heavily modified. I can faintly feel the involvement of the Abyss Church's strength. Although he was still digging, he felt a premonition that it would surface soon. Let's go, we've rested enough, the captain said quietly. The group stood up and followed without saying much. Does everyone seem a bit down? Duen asked, puzzled. In due time, the power of the potion grows stronger, and the despair of death lingers in our hearts. Negative emotions surge like waves. Su Chi spoke softly. Then, Brother Su, it seems I'm not affected either. Duen also keenly noticed this. It's normal, you have Big Brother looking after you. What? Duen was stunned for a moment, not understanding. This scene also caught Su Chi's attention. It seemed Duen really wasn't aware of the power within him, nor did he know his own identity. And, in this superpower world, no traces of any god's kin were seen anywhere. No shrines, nothing related to gods, just an ordinary superpowered world. In such a place, there must be hidden depths, even extraordinary value. Otherwise, the Abyss Church wouldn't have set their sights on this place, and Su Chi picked up a shattered potion bottle from the ground, still supplying substances like chaotic. The group walked towards the front. The layout of the final level was simple. A passage led to a research space, and by crossing this area, one could reach the control room. But when the group stepped into that research space, everyone looked shocked at the sight. What the hell did they do? Duen was especially furious, roaring with anger. The entire research space had tens of thousands of transparent glass tanks. All of them contained people. In some, the liquid had turned dark red, and the bodies inside were unclear. In others, the individuals had already lost their life force. Some tanks had even shattered. These are ordinary people. A team member approached, his expression grave and heartbroken as he looked at the people inside the tanks. He could tell the strength of these people by the degree of muscle atrophy in their bodies. Is this why so many people have disappeared over the years? All quietly brought to a place like this to become subjects of human experiments. A wave of intense heartache surged uncontrollably in the hearts of the captain and the others, even dispersing the negative emotions they had just been affected by. Duen clenched his fists even tighter. It was as if these people were not strangers to him but his own family. Only Su Chi looked on, unmoved. This mass grave was indeed cruel, but there were even crueler things. Now that you all feel such sorrow, let me share news with you that will help you quickly get past this grief. Su Chi spoke softly. Based on my judgment, the lifespans of these bodies in the glass containers do not exceed 3 months. In other words, every 3 months, they switch to a new batch of test subjects. Everyone fell silent, their sorrow indeed gone, replaced entirely by anger and murderous intent. They considered every person as a part of what they were sworn to protect. This was their principle. And now, they had discovered such a thing. We must get out. We must report this to the Superpower Association. The Superpower 7 will surely expose all this darkness. Su Chi watched the people with clenched fists, then turned his gaze to the silent captain. What do you think, Captain? Is their plan viable? Everyone was startled and looked to the captain. Why say that? Why is there no way out? The captain leaned against the wall of the corridor, slowly speaking. Haven't you realized? The massive number of disappearances, the horrific experiments, this entire industrial complex, and the substantial financing test subjects. It's impossible for all this to happen without the Superpower Association's knowledge. Which means... The captain's voice trembled. He took a deep breath to steady himself. his hoarse voice reaching everyone's ears. The ones supporting and even overseeing all of this are the upper echelon of the Superpower Association. And that includes the Superpower 7. Everyone shuddered as if struck by lightning. Shock and disbelief filled their eyes. Duen in particular reacted vehemently, wanting to open his mouth, wanting to counter, wanting to deny the captain's words. But he couldn't say anything. The newcomers beside him felt the same, trembling, teeth clenched. No! There must be some mistake. It shouldn't be like this. Emotions filled with chaos overwhelmed them. The Superpower Association had always been seen as a guardian of everything. They were the fervent heroes they had worshipped since childhood, and yet now they were faced with such news. Nobody could remain calm. Fortunately, Su Qi mercilessly interrupted everyone's turmoil. All right, let's skip the drama of shock at betrayal, everyone. Pay attention now. The control room is just ahead. There were no monsters as we made our way to the headquarters, and there is no difficulty or danger in entering and opening the gates. The others showed a slight change in expression upon hearing this. Su Qi continued, but, on the left side of the corridor, there is a peculiar silence as some pipes are being shut, and on the right, there are heavy breathing sounds behind the sealed gate. He looked up. There's something moving in the ceiling too. It seems rather impatient. I understand. The captain, eyes closed, took over. Now we are the so-called test subjects. This is a process they've arranged for us. When we push the control room switch, all gates will open, but it will also be the swamp we cannot leave after finding out everything.